Hello and welcome to the Be Better podcast, where we believe any and every area of your life has a little more potential that you can tap into to change the course and trajectory of your outcomes. My name is Clarissa Parody and I am your host, and I have worked and trained in the worlds of business strategy, leadership, and performance. And I am the person who believes in and creates success where there appears to be ceilings. And if that sounds like something that's in your world, your reality, and something you want more of, welcome to the show. It is a great day to change your life. Let's go. Oh, recording in progress. We are beginning. We have a friend.
Amazing.
You know, you called it. You did say this will be the time he bats at the mic. And you know, am I regretting my life choices? Maybe. Hi. Can you go down for now, please? Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
You know what I was thinking about right before we started was cat versus dog people, and I just I very much a dog person. Cats are fine now, but so a fun fact about dogs is they're the only animals that will maintain eye contact with you.
That's crazy, because
So
most
it's just
animals, well, unless it's an aggressive dog, because I've heard if you have an aggressive dog, don't make eye contact because it can be, especially if they're guard dogs, it can be considered a threat, like or territorial or dominant. This is, you did this. This is your creation. This has never happened.
I feel like he does that every time we hop on a FaceTime or something.
This is true. Well, that's great. So for those of you who are just hopping in, figuring out life, if you haven't looked at the title of the podcast today, with me joining is Lee, and I'm shaking things up. I'm doing things differently, and who better to try things that are new with than someone you really love, know, and trust. And so thank you so much for being with me here today. I'm so excited. And it's really what I love about my conversations with Lee is that I wish I recorded all of them. Like, I think our conversations, I always walk away having learned something or having a new insight or feeling like I'm smart. And it's so fun. And I think I mean, this could be the trashiest conversation I've ever had with you. Who knows? But I do know that one of the things I want to bring to this is there's just a lot of reality that and wisdom that can come out just in being, just in existing. And that's what we're here to do today.
Amazing. Well, thank you for the gratuitous introduction.
Oh my God. You know, I think the biggest trick I've learned is to keep good people close. And the people that bring out better versions of you, or a version of you that you want to walk into, you got to know who they are and know what they bring out of you. Because the truth is that an organism's behavior is a function of the organism and the environment in which the organism is in. And so your people that are around you change your environment, which changes your behavior. So to me, it's like, just choose wisely.
Yeah, that's really something I key on as well. As I have a pretty tight-knit group of friends that are, I don't know, there's maybe 8 or 10 of them that I'm almost in constant communication with, or at least every second day. But the funny thing is like none of them are like really friends with each other. They just know each other through me. I don't have like one of those big central friend groups, right? And so there's some advantages to that. You get a lot of diverse opinions and can bounce ideas off of different people. And sometimes people are going to tell you your ideas are dumb, and other people like yourself are going to encourage you to keep going.
Totally. So I have the same experience. I have a lot of close friends, and I would say a lot of them don't know each other. And it's not that I try to keep them away from each other. It's just how it shook out. And so what do you like? I mean, talk to me about your friend selection. Like, what kind of people do you keep around you?
Oh, that's such a good question. I feel like I haven't had maybe like a brand new friend in a couple of years. I think the one thing in common between all of my friends is just all of them have like an amazing work ethic. And they're all just really honest with me, and then I feel like I can be honest with them. Those are kind of the hallmarks of all of our friendships, I would say.
The hallmarks of all of your friendships. I would say I get to meet different facets of me with my different friends. Of all people, you invited me to join you on a hackathon thing. I like, what the heck's a hackathon? Like, let's go. So we spent a weekend voluntarily working and sharing ideas for fun. And I think there's not many people that would would invite me to do that in general. I don't know if I have that many people in my circle, but I've got definitely friends that bring out the bravery in me, bring out the courage. Like, okay, fine, I'll jump into that glacial lake, no problem. Sounds like fun.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
go ahead.
No, the hackathon thing was interesting because you know what, I've been in IT for over 10 years now, and I've never done one either. That was my first one. So
Are you
yeah,
serious? I
yeah.
was like, oh, this guy totally knows. I went in with just ridiculous amounts of confidence that you could guide me through. Well, I mean, that is the level of trust I have in you. That's incredible. Okay, I do have questions because now's the time where I can just like ask you things and I get to know and the world gets to know.
Yeah.
So you right now, I don't like, how would you describe you as you know you right now?
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like I'm, you know, uh, a little bit crazy, I would say. Just because like what I've been doing, like just turned 30 this year, and for some reason I, decided to completely take a huge shift in my life and in my career. And the year's almost done, and it's been a wild ride. And just the amount of stuff that I've been able to accomplish in terms of honing my craft, I would say, in terms of software development, and the amount of responsibility I've been taking on. My friends and family are looking at me like I'm crazy.
What do you think has them think that you're crazy?
Um, I think that well, from my family's perspective, like not too many of them are kind of like the entrepreneurial types. Just very much kind of like the traditional born in the 70s sort of mentality. So you get your job, you work at the same company for 20 plus years, and that's just what you do, and you raise your family and that sort of thing, right? And then I am definitely doing the exact opposite. I haven't bought a house yet. I don't have a wife and kids. I pretty much just like put most of my time into working and just trying to build something of value for others, I guess is really what I'm getting at.
Amazing. So what's interesting is I got to see you before you took on and you stepped into a startup. And I think that's just such a ballsy move, honestly. You're a gambling man, and I didn't even know. And I watched you go from one job. We had a bunch of conversations. You rapidly grew your career there, and then you shifted gears. So before we dive into what's happening now, you went to school for what?
Yeah, so I went to school to MacEwan University, downtown Edmonton. Yeah, Bachelor of Science with a major in computer science and minor in psych. I mean, when people talk about their minors, it's like you took half as many classes as the main thing. But yeah, and that experience was not my favorite. I tell that story to people sometimes, and it was riddled with anxiety and depression and poor grades and a lot of stress. And yeah, I was just the whole time I was focused on the outcome of getting a job, which I think is probably what a lot of people focus on when they go to school. And just like, how is this going to benefit me once I'm out? And if you're not thinking about that, I've seen a couple people who come out of school with a $30,000 degree and work at Starbucks. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's most likely wasn't their dream. So it's
right.
Yeah.
Right. I had the opposite experience with university. I think I went to university to fix me. I think that's what I went to university for. I was told I had to go. So I was like, well, I better figure it out. And not that I was opposed to going, but in my mind, I wanted to break for someone who's such a rule follower, I wanted to break the rules. I was like, why can't I take a year off? Because I had been in this beautiful like incubator of a high school. I know a lot of people don't like high school. I loved high school. I had a really like set of incredible mentors, incredible teachers, people who are really invested in the well-being, development, and growth of their students into something like creators in the world, be them artistic or be them just massive contributions to society in some way, shape, or form, whether in the form of creating businesses, product, services, or raising wonderful humans. So it's, to me, it's like, I could not have asked for a better experience. I was really, really, really blessed, lucky. It worked out. And so going into university, I was like, what the hell am I going to do? And I mean, I think I don't know how you picture it, but I looked at people around me and I was like, who do I most want my life to look like? And that's how I picked my major.
Mm.
And even then it was a shot in the dark. I was like, I don't know, maybe like I'll change it. You don't have to decide year one. I figured out when the absolute deadline was for everything. I was like, when do I absolutely have to know by? Year one, year two, like how soon do I have to
Right.
decide? And then I gave myself that breathing room, but I had no idea what I was going to do. I still would offer that I don't fully know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, but every few years it evolves and I change. And as you've done, you've completely like, how long have we been friends for? 3 or 4 years? 5 years, maybe?
Yeah, maybe a year before the pandemic started. So yeah, 3 or 4 years.
And in that time, you've had what? Is it 2 different jobs, 3 different jobs?
Yeah. So when I was 24, I would have joined a company called Bits and Glass, which is shout out to them. And my manager there was Aaron. They're an incredible company to work for. I was able, they just gave like a lot of opportunity, a lot of room to grow. So some of the more notable things so first of all, it's a consulting company. They kind of specialize in different software frameworks, like low code software, where a consultant is trained in a specific thing, and then there's clients and you do the work for them. And so what I mean by low code software, for listeners might not know what that is, a lot of these typically they're like visual things with like drag and drop components. So it's a little bit easier to kind of map out the software you're building. And the things you drag and drop onto the canvas are just like these prepackaged kind of modules or functions that are like tested by experts in a different company, sort of thing, right? And so you just basically get this toolbox and this empty canvas, and you get to drop things on, and then you magically have software. So that's what they do, kind of at a high level. And I had the opportunity to work in the US a couple of times, most notably Hawaii for 5 months. I got to go there one summer for when I was 25 for like I did 20 days at a time. I'd come back for a week and then did that for 5 months in a row, working for I actually probably can't say who I was working for, but
no problem.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So you went to school, the grades were meh, anxiety, depression, and then you end up at a consulting company at some point, and you end up working in Hawaii. Wow.
Yeah.
Life does interesting things, eh?
And so kind of the interesting, maybe, I don't know, lesson for if any of the listeners are going to school or anything like that. My grades were shit. I'll tell you that. Like I barely passed. I think I had maybe I finished with like a 2.3. At one point I was on like what they call a dean's vacation. So you kind of had to take a year off, and just because your grades are so low. And then I was dealing with a bunch of stuff in my personal life. And then at the same time, though, I was taking like open studies courses. So you kind of continue to make progress towards your degree. And then I graduated on a technicality, which was kind of funny. I had to read the fine print, and then I went to like the advisor and was, you got to let me graduate. And then they did, but that job, I actually, coming out of school, I was one of the things I was most concerned about was, in software, I didn't have like a portfolio to show for applying to jobs. I remember doing one interview that was like, there was a boardroom, and there was maybe 5 or 6 people in there, which was ridiculous. Like, why would you ever do that? And then one of them was like the lead developer. The other was like the hiring manager. The other person was from HR. Like, and I think they want all those people to attend so that everyone has like, can scope out if like you as the candidate would be a good fit. But man, you're like 23 years old, you're applying for your first job. It's just a bunch of people staring at you, waiting for you to like write code live on the big screen. And that's like, I've never felt more nervous in my life, I don't think. And but what I was getting at was the consulting job with Bits and Glass was actually, I was referred by someone I went to school with. So that was kind of nice. So I guess really, you know, do some networking while you're in school and make friends and be nice to everyone.
And also tell people what you're interested in. Like, I think the second, like the primary job network, like what's posted isn't like what's really out there. Like, don't be fooled that what is listed is what is available, because it's not. There's so many positions that aren't openly there's positions that people would consider hiring for if they found the right person, but the job isn't necessarily posted and they're not actively recruiting. And I think most of my jobs, I can safely say I applied for one out of all as an adult, every job that I've had. Sometimes I've met with the people and they're like, well, can you just put your resume in our whatever HR system? And we just need to do that for like dotting I's, crossing T's situations. And so for me, my experience was the hidden job market was the one that just worked. And so when people know what you're interested in and know what your goals are and your general proclivities or skills, you'll have opportunities that weren't expected. You'll have opportunities that weren't expected. So you, after Bits and Glass, you moved to a different company. And in that company, I remember you saw some pretty serious jumps in your like progression.
So that company after Bits and Glass was, I was only there for 6 months. And
that's it.
Yeah, it was,
Wow.
I was part of the, Great Resignation, which I didn't think I would have been, because I was watching the news and everything, and I'm like, everyone's like quitting their jobs, like what's going on, like, and then I did it, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm part of the gang. Moving. So kind of what triggered that move was, I think, you know, being in a pandemic, kind of all of the amount of work to be done fell, because people, like big corporations and stuff, they were rolling back their budgets and recalculating and all that stuff, right? And so in the consulting world, like consultants are the first to go. So the work, you know, there was still work to do. It was a little bit stagnant. And then I also didn't adjust very well to the work from home. I'm definitely more of a going to the office 4 days a week kind of guy, and maybe stay at home for the Friday. So there was that. I wanted a bit of a change. I was feeling like kind of cooped up. And then I was, to be honest, I was money chasing a little bit. The next company that I moved to, it was quite the jump in salary. And that was pretty eye-opening for me. Yeah, just because, you know, I'd never been confident in asking for large sums of money. And you know, just happened. So it was an interesting experience.
Yeah. And I think, well, asking for large sums of money is a lot easier when you understand the value you deliver. And if you are questioning the value that you deliver, it's really easy to just accept what is. And I mean, you know, my story of like asking for the biggest pay raise I've ever asked for. And, you know, I went in and I was like, what is like really I mean, I was nervous because I was like, this could make me look like such an asshole. And I also was like, and what's the worst that could happen? Are they going to fire me for asking for a raise? They might look at me like I'm crazy, but if the compensation is in alignment with the value, contributions, and difference I have made and that I'm currently demonstrating, and I tell them my goals of where I want to go inside the company or what have you, people are often really willing to listen. And I mean, you had the evidence behind you of the differences you've made in the projects you worked on, and you also had some aspirational goals. And like, I just want to drive this home. The company you left for was that the startup that you switched into?
So when I left software consulting, I I left in February, and then I took a nice 2-week vacation to Europe, specifically Spain and Portugal, and I immediately fell in love with Lisbon. And then I came back, and my friend was starting this startup, and they needed a full-time sort of tech person, software person. And so I started with them, and I was kind of prepared. It felt like the right time for the move, right? Because I wanted to do things differently than what was happening in the consulting world. I mean, sometimes it can be like you work with great people, you get lots of different types of experiences because you work because of the consulting aspect, so many different industries, verticals like airlines, hospitality, like everything, right? But the one thing I wasn't getting was exposure to really the breadth of what technology is in like our society, like specifically just doing like what is called like API development with a specific technology. This startup opportunity has me literally doing everything top down, like learning infrastructure stuff, writing front-end code, back-end code, multiple languages, multiple frameworks, and really it's just what it gives me is an opportunity to like be creative. What was actually the main thing, right? Felt I was feeling very stagnant, and the change I made, your creativity just explodes. You come up with an idea, you can run with it, and that's like the startup world when you're a small team just starting out. And I don't think I've ever been happier in a job, to be honest.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you really value like creativity and solutions. Like you like fixing problems and trying things out.
I'm definitely a fixer. I bring that into my personal life a little too much. I was discussing that with my therapist the other day, but the freedom to be creative with solutions and put the pieces together and come up with something that you feel is innovative and that you can be proud of. And you know what? I think that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done what I was doing for the last couple of years, right? And so the last couple of years before that were really, like I mentioned before, kind of honing your craft, making connections in the industry, and actually just building confidence. I definitely could not, or I would have had a way harder time making this jump if I hadn't built that level of confidence in myself.
That was it you that I was talking to this about? Maybe, like, let me know. When you work for an organization, when you're in and you work for someone, or you're in corporate or what have you, it's your little playground, it's your sandbox, and you have resources that you wouldn't normally have in a startup. You have all these things, and it's not like you're trying to screw around and waste resources, but you can try things that may be not, like, you're not really sure how they go yet. And you can get a line of sight into something that can direct you better once you are doing the top to bottom. Because the thing about a startup is you're wearing multiple hats. Like, you're probably not doing just one job, you're probably doing several, or have responsibilities that are not just like within one scope. And so to me, that what a better place to learn than from an organization that has some polish to it. Like, they got there. Everyone started as a startup.
Yes, in a sense. I mean, I would describe it as just there's like small business and then there's startup. I wouldn't say they're the same thing, right? Like, small business might be, your local sort of traditionally run business, where you sell soap at the store, right? Typically, like a tech startup anyway, the idea is to potentially like get investors or scale very quickly. There's like a methodology to it, right? But yeah, you hear that a lot, very often in the startup world, like wearing multiple hats, and if you don't know how to do something, you got to just learn it. There's no choice, right? Or else it just sinks. yes, sometimes I kind of visualize it as not even multiple hats. It's just like there's like 5 of us, however many people wearing one big hat, and we're just like all under it. Um,
A
it's
single tent circus.
yeah. A single tent is a very good way of describing it.
That's really cool. Okay, so making that leap into a startup, you have to have there's a little bit of intestinal fortitude you have to have. You have to have endurance. And we talked a little bit about like you kind of broke the rules. You have that you're in your family, like that 70s mindset. People have the job for 20 years, everything stays consistent, stability. I would say in that past generation, I felt like security and stability was tied directly to the same employment as if it would be enduring and forever. Maybe that's a union mentality. I'm not really sure. But what makes you successful in the world of startups and being like in that entrepreneurial mindset vibe area?
Yeah, I would use the word grit.
Mm,
Is probably the one I would use. I just I certainly don't give up very easily. And I think it's there's a lot of perspective to it too, right? Like you can be successful and be good at things, even though there are like these genius programmers that work for, Facebook, Google, like whatever, right? And then I don't think I'm a very good programmer, certainly not compared to them, but I'm still, working for this company and we're making money and doing great things. So once you kind of have that perspective and you're like a little easier on yourself, you kind of just like get out of your own way. And then the rest of it is, like how bad do you want it? And I think you have to determine like what your motivations are, and just have a little discipline behind what you do. Sort of like people going to the gym every day, probably 3 out of 7 days of the week it sucks, but the rest of the days are fine. But yeah, like if you're strictly extrinsically motivated, whether it's like money or status or whatever, that's pretty fickle. I think like it might last you 2 years, maybe, running on that sort of fuel, but it can fizzle out for pretty quick, I would say. And then you're exposed to trend hopping as well, right? You need to have conviction in like what the vision is. And even though what you're doing might not be popular, or maybe it is popular, but by the time you provide the service or launch your product or whatever, maybe it's not popular, maybe you stick with it, it becomes popular again, right? So you want to make sure you have an aspect of like intrinsic motivation.
what would you say your intrinsic motivation is?
It's I think it's a very old man thing to say for a 30-year-old, but I actually just want to provide as much value as I can to other people. And so you see a lot of examples maybe of what's an example? People who write, like software people who might write like a bot for algorithmic trading on the stock market or something like that, and they hit it big and they make a ton of money. I'm like, that's not appealing to me. It doesn't help people, right? And so like what we're doing at the startup now, it's just cash to crypto. So we're a cryptocurrency exchange, and we're building a bunch of like kind of auto purchasing tools and things like that. The long-term value of what we're trying to build is it can really have an impact on countries that are not as developed as places like Canada and the US, right? So these countries in like South America, Central America, Africa, where the currency every couple of years is completely in shambles and destabilized, those countries eventually will really see the impact of cryptocurrency and the blockchain and stuff like that. And so yeah, and I think personally for me, my long-term goal, like if when the startup works or we're kind of over with it, next step in the career is I wanted to do something that was more on the side of like not-for-profit using the blockchain somehow. And so, yeah, that's kind of where internally that comes from.
You're a helper. You like to help make a difference. No? Yes?
I mean, yeah, I would.
Maybe.
Sorry,
Yeah,
was that a question or a statement?
a little bit A, a little bit of B.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say so. Like, I just, kind of see the value of enabling others, right? So the kind, like, as an example of how we would want to maybe hire at our company. Personally, it would be amazing if we could hire someone that could like replace everything that I do, at least like maybe 60-70%, because that frees me up to go do learn other things, be forward looking, that sort of thing. And I think that's, there's actually like a lot of confidence in that statement, because when I had my very first job in tech, I had this manager, and this was like kind of what you call like tech support for the government sort of thing. I had this manager, and he was a good mentor. He was a really nice guy. We really got along. But one of the things he said to me was he essentially told me to never reveal all of my secrets about how I do things, and as like a form of job security, right? And that is just like not a growth mindset whatsoever. I'm like, no, I want to, perfect whatever these skills are, give it to someone else who's like up and coming so that I can do other stuff. Like, why would I put myself in a little box? Yeah, I'll be dependent on for the rest of my career, but I'll be dependent on in this one little area. And that's like a prison for me. I don't know.
That does sound like a prison. It really does. Like, could you imagine your way of feeling safe and secure is withholding? Like, and I'm of that mindset that how you do one thing is how you do most things, if not everything. And so if that's how you're operating in that world, how are you operating in your marriage? Like, you have to depend on me. How are you operating with your kids? How are you operating with your friends? Like, being an indisposable friend? Like, that it's interesting. I share that growth mindset mentality with you. One of the things that I've been doing lately is I walk people through how I do what I do. Can they replicate it? Probably not the same way I do it, but I would rather it blow up and do something bigger and make waves, because if everyone does better, everyone does better. A rising tide lifts all boats. And I don't believe, if I keep those ideas to myself, if I'm the best kept secret, the next secret that's above that I could have tapped into, that I could have had room for, that I could have had space for, doesn't get access, and we stay small and stifled rather than ever growing and expanding, which is just, and maybe that's not true. Maybe that's the wrong way to think, but it certainly has served me. And it sounds like it serves you as well.
Well, it's definitely, definitely seems to have served me, right? In the past, managing, a team of developers, that's up to 10 or 14 people at sometimes. There's a lot of pressure for you to, lead the team to success. And how else would you lead the team to success and make the client happy if you're, only telling them 80% of what you know? That's like the most irrational thing I can ever think of. And it's also like, have some intellectual honesty with yourself. Like, how did you get the information? You didn't create these things out of thin air, right? You got it from someone else who got it from someone else. And it's just the building blocks of everything, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think you can have your own insights, but I don't know how many of my insights I eventually didn't read in a book somewhere else and was like, it wasn't mine first. Oh, that's so frustrating. And this is, this kind of draws me to one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. So his withholding gives him a quote unquote competitive edge. Theoretically, like, he's so needed, no one can win. He wins. So in the world of competition, like, where do you land first? I guess what distinguishes you and in how you're competitive in the market, and also in general, in the world of competition, how do you show up? So first question was
Yeah, well, you know what? Well, kind of the precursor question is, I wouldn't consider, if that guy spent his whole career like with that mentality, I wouldn't consider him competitive at all, right? Um, I mean, like, good for you. You can do this one thing really well. That's which is like, I don't want to talk down about people, but it's just not something that interests me. I'm just like, let's get moving, let's do new things and really grow. But like, how do I stay competitive? I mean, in tech, I already mentioned that I don't consider myself to be like a good programmer, but you don't really have to be when you're making your own stuff, right? Like, whatever kind of solves the problem, and you have a little bit of you have a bunch of like core principles, like you're not breaking the law, you're not people's data isn't getting leaked, and as long as you kind of cover all those bases, like, messy code is messy code, who really cares? But that's my opinion. I'm sure a lot of employers would disagree with me. But like
But honestly, how are they going to know? Like, how would they
when you start
possibly
working
know?
for them and your code looks like trash.
Oh, okay. I was like, I don't like, I mean, if you handed me an app, I would have no idea if the code was good. And I'm like, does it work?
Well, yeah, does it work? And I mean that's the kind of the driving force behind a MVP, like minimum viable product, is, does it work? Can you scale it a bit? Are
Right.
customers like, when customers go to use it, does it break? Right. And so you want to cover those things, and then once you get into like a commercialization phase where you want like a really professional piece of software that's like ultra reliable, and all those things, then you spend the time to clean it up. But I try to think of like a metaphor for, or an analogy for, non-tech, non-software people. It's just that there's a lot of kind of connections between like writing code and maybe writing a book or writing an essay, right? So if you write a couple of pages of your essay for school or whatever you're doing, you're really bad at using commas and they're all over the place, and your teacher marks them up and stuff like that. Like, you see the same thing when you review somebody's code. Like, people in an organization, people don't just like write code and put it out there, right? There's a whole process of like, somebody reviews it, maybe two people review it, to make sure like there's no bugs, or that it's good, it's doing what it's supposed to do, that sort of thing. And so there's like this editorial process to how code gets developed in the real world. But yeah, so back to kind of how I'm differentiating myself. I think maybe I don't like to like blow myself up.
You just called yourself bad like 3 times.
Yeah, okay,
Like,
okay.
I just
So
think like
should I
maybe
say
I was
something
like,
good about
should
myself?
you just rein that back a little? Because again, I'm like, I look at what I've seen you produce and what you've talked about your projects, and I'm like, you should maybe stop saying that, because I think
Right.
you are actually better than you think you are. And I mean, like, okay, it's one thing to be like, I love swimming, but I'm no Michael Phelps. No kidding.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, no, you're not a Usain Bolt? You can't run that fast?
So I figured out what it is.
Okay.
It's there's a couple of aspects to why I do that. The first thing is like, we talked about like our friend groups before, and probably like at least 50% of them are like people who are smarter than me, like, or I hold them in such a high regard, right? So when I like reflect on things and the work I did that day and the effort I put in and stuff, I'm like, yeah, like, I feel like I put in an effort, to look at how this person performs, and so they always say like, comparison's the thief of joy, but I really like that saying. But so you don't like
also
dwell.
Keeps you hungry.
It does, yeah. There's something to like, something to achieve, something to look at and grow towards. But the other thing is that I found I do it as an ego check, because imagine you like developing software, you essentially hop onto this computer and you don't really have parameters. You can essentially play God and make whatever you want, right? And so if you build something that's incredible on your computer, I mean, like, I feel like people have large egos, and you see it on Twitter all the time when they these founders, they tweet and they status chase and they say, oh, I'm so great, blah, blah, blah. So I do it as a little bit of an ego check, to be honest.
For those of you who don't know, Lee is very good. And at least from what I know and understand, here's how I know you're good. Multiple pay increases from your last organization. People sought after you. You didn't chase a job, you were offered jobs. So like, to me, if you were an okay or mediocre performer, that wouldn't happen. And I mean, yeah, okay, fine, you're a nice guy. Okay, fine, you have like a pretty good attitude and great teeth, but that doesn't make a business money. And people want to work with people they like, for sure, because going to work and being around a bunch of miserable people is awful. And they also want people who do great things. So for those of you listening, Lee is gonna have his ego check, and congratulations, you've had it, but no more. Not for this.
Okay, fine.
You can do it tomorrow, but today you've hit your maximum, as I think.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I like setting those parameters. Yeah, okay. So, I'll try and answer the question directly without dancing around it now. I think that the main differentiator, if in terms of competition, is I am pretty personable with non-tech people, right? And so that started that sort of building that skill in school. Actually, I don't. I think I would go. I would leave class, have like a 3-hour break in the afternoon, and I would go sit at the pub. And the people at the pub were the business people and the marketing people and those people, right? And you hang out with them and chat and be friends with them, and then you get a sense of what they're looking forward to after school and the kinds of jobs they're going for and what they want to do, and you just get a better sense of like how to communicate and stuff like that. And then I've also had lots of practice, doing customer service type things and had some really good mentors there. But I'm definitely not, I think the old stereotype of a computer programmer that just like sits in the dark and drinks a can of Coke and writes code. That I think that's slipping away a lot because of Silicon Valley and social media, and you see these like super young rich people that do all these fancy things. But yeah, I would say that's probably one of my main skills is being personable. Like you're one moment you're in the computer, you're doing all sorts of like logic type things. Take a few seconds to switch out, and you're like, oh, I'm talking to people now. Let's do that sort of thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you played sports too, didn't you, growing up?
Yeah. So I think, I was actually thinking about this before we started. If I had to like write like a one-liner description of like either characteristics or like likes and dislikes, I would say that I'm the only tech person I know that also played hockey and loves country music. Like I think maybe
did you just write a dating profile? I think you might have.
I think maybe if you had like a Venn diagram, you would get two of those intersected, but not all three. I've never met one that is all three. So I don't know if that like is valuable to an employer or anybody, but yeah, I mean, maybe they're like, it's like redheads. There's only 2% of us out there. I just need to search.
You know what? People may come out of the woodwork. Okay, do you have a favorite country artist?
Ooh, that's tough.
Or a favorite country song, like a go-to?
For the last month, I've been listening to Eric Church on repeat every morning.
Eric Church.
Yeah. What is the song that's like really resonating with me right now? Let me just pull it up here quick. There's one called Doing Life with Me. It's a good one. And then another one, which is like an old one from one of his first albums. It's called Hell on the Heart. It's just, I really like those ones right now. And I like, not that I just like listen to country as like my favorite genre. I write code to country. Which if you ever interview any other software people, it's not gonna happen. You're not gonna find that. They are doing like, maybe there would be some people who do rap music or whatever, and a lot of pop and stuff, but probably more so in the techno kind of
EDM.
upbeat sort of genre, right? Yeah.
I'm like, just put on some Beethoven, it's fine.
I've actually tried that and it actually works too.
I mean, I think I tend to be of a different era. Like, I don't, Beethoven isn't my favorite. I really like Chopin. Oh, it's been a minute. Anyways, I eventually went through, okay, this is what happened. Not related to country at all. I decided I was going to like reignite some of the things I used to love. You know, I was like, what do I need more of in life? I need more joy. And like we've hung out a couple times and you've had country music on and you are possibly like you're singing along, you're two-stepping by yourself. I'm like,
yeah,
wow, I need to do that. So I decided I was like, I'm going to go through every era of classical music to find which ones I like. Cause I used to I was that 18-year-old that had like decided that I was saving my money to buy seasons tickets to the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. Like could you get cooler? I don't know. Like, but I went through these eras and I was like, wow, like there is so much music. There's so much music in the world. And if you can start like curating, I've now have my own area of curated music for like different vibes. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of things I can really love. Do I work to music? Nothing that has words. Anything
really?
that has, I can't.
That surprises me.
Really? What would you expect from me?
You know,
Justin Timberlake, like put on some
you
pop?
should try because we have an office speaker and I was bumping JT the other day and it was great. I was singing along. We were getting stuff done. It works miracles, I think.
Well, but I kind of wonder if, because I don't know much about code, but is it zeros and ones? Is that what you do? Or click and draw?
No,
I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, like, but for me, I write. Like most of my stuff is writing words. So when other words are there, it's
okay,
using the same area of my brain, and I'm like, okay,
right.
all of a sudden I've written a verse, and I'm like, ooh, that's not quite the brand of this particular property. Never mind. And sometimes it's actually great too. When you're in a creative rut, like if you're in what do you do? Because I mean, for me, I try to put on music and like or I lay and I stare at the ceiling. I just lay there until something falls from the ether into my brain. But what do you do?
So creative rut.
Or like you're bumping into something, you can't solve it.
Right. Yeah. Like almost like writer's block sort of idea, right? Yeah. So I actually I really trust myself. And what I do is just let it go for a glass of wine or a jog or whatever, and go do something else completely unrelated. And then the next day usually just comes to me. It's like there's like some science to, that talks about how like your subconscious mind will solve problems, and then it's presented consciously at some point. But I really just like trust that process, to be honest.
I mean, there's, as you said, research there. This is literally a thing. Your brain works on it while you're sleeping. I also find that, especially if I'm in a group session, because there's many times where I have to collaborate, and there's two people I'm really collaborating a lot with now. We have a lot of like just the two of us are meeting, and we'll sit there and we're like, this doesn't solve it. This doesn't solve it. And that first 30 minutes of the meeting, I want to pull out my own eyeballs. I'm like, oh, and in facilitation, we call it the groan zone, where it's like, oh, like nothing is sticking. And then the last 15 minutes, we did 80% of the work. I was like, oh, this is like the Pareto distribution. This makes sense. 20% of the time, 80% of the work is accomplished, but it sometimes takes that settling. Sometimes it's overnight when I sleep. Sometimes it's that first 45 minutes of it, 30 minutes of an hour-long meeting. And I'm like, whoa, we achieved everything in 15 minutes. And so I just giving space and either changing your environment like you do is very helpful, or just knowing it'll come. It will figure it out.
So you mentioned something called the Pareto distribution. So the idea behind that is like you might as well just do your work in bursts, right? Sort of thing.
It's the 80-20 rule essentially.
Okay.
Yes, but with that, it's like 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. And it's interesting because I believe it's also seen in nature, where it's like 80% of the repopulation occurs by 20% of the males, or whatever it is. It's very interesting. But like some people hate it, some people love it. And there was actually they did a model. Now I don't know how true this is. I didn't read the article in its entirety, but they did a model in some kind of magical digital land, and they distributed everything equally, resources equally. And then 20% of the people ended up with 80% of the resources, just because of how things would be used. And I was like, wow, like we have in so many places in the world today, we want like complete equality. And just that, I think sometimes we forget is that we have this like reptilian brain, this dino brain, and we're not separate from, we like to think we're like completely like humanitarian in our behavior, but we're not. We're wired for survival, and the learning to thrive part, that's new. That's brand new in the time that we've existed. It's like the latest iOS update, and we that reptilian part of your brain tells you to do some stuff that can be really dumb sometimes. And it's just like, don't panic about equality, because we're working towards it, and that's a new part of our brain. We're really trying, and there's more work to be done, but like we're gonna screw it up for sure. We're humans. Like, I don't know, I screw up most things, even when I'm like super well intentioned, like my workout plans. I'm like, I'm gonna be so good. I for sure screw it up at least some point. Well intentioned.
That's super interesting that they did that. The 80-20 thing popped up in a simulation, right?
I gotta find this. I'm like, did I make it up? I might have dreamt it. Maybe I astral traveled and I went to
I've done
a
that
separate
before
universe.
too. It's fine. Yeah.
Oh, I'm like,
but you see that, you know, the colloquial term, like the rich get richer in a simulation, when everything starts out evenly distributed, and it still goes that way. So like that, what that says to me is, it does get to a point where things, there's a tipping point where, you have everything concentrated on this like little tiny point of the graph. And you might need to apply some mechanisms to like redistribute, even it out a little bit.
Yeah.
But you should expect it to do the wave, right? Because that's like the natural thing. And if you know that it's going to do that, that's like the biggest advantage. Like,
totally.
I have a tough time with I don't know, people who complain a little bit too much about the system. That's obviously coming from a white man who doesn't really have social issues, I suppose. But it's just my perspective on it is like, it's a game, so just learn how to play the game. Like, what the rules are. Everyone knows how everyone's treated, so it's like, we want to work towards to make it better for everyone, obviously, but like in the moment, how do you not know that,
yeah. And like the truth is, like, the game doesn't necessarily start out equal,
right?
Doesn't start out fair. But I'm like, the thing I like to use is dandelions. I have them in my backyard. There are some dandelions religiously, they're going to get mowed down, they're going to get dug up, but then there's some that are just thriving behind my shed right now. Like, there's still, the base of the plant is still quite large. I've never seen a bigger dandelion situation, but I can't get to it, and I don't really want to squirt glyphosate on my lawn. Anyways, that's another story. But I'm like, everything else died, was killed off. I got in the way, I destroyed it. But for the luck of that dandelion, it had it thrive. And so it even happens in plants, it happens in nature, it happens like, some things are going to have more fertile soil, and it doesn't make it fair, and it doesn't make it right or wrong. There isn't morality around it, I don't think, because I don't think that dandelion seed was like, I'm picking the best possible spot for my home. And like, if we take the morality out of it and start thinking of it less from an emotional state, but from what can I do right now? What can I do right now that would improve this? Or that how could I use this for me and not see it as against me? It can be really hard to do, for sure. I've definitely allowed myself to be, or perceive myself to be a victim. And I'm like, was I really? Could I make it work out to my like better to a better outcome for me? Probably. Because sometimes people white knuckle grip onto what they think it should be. And you're so tied to what it should be. Like you're holding onto this tiny little banana that you think you want. When if you just let go, you could grab a different piece of fruit, or you could like just, but you're so busy occupied with this that your attention, energy, efforts, thoughts, feelings, anger goes here. And it's like, well, and I can hear people saying, well, it must be nice. And I'm like, it's actually not nice. It's essential. It's like I had to I had to go to therapy for this. So it's like, don't take it lightly, but it's worth having wouldn't you rather know that you could use it for your good, that it doesn't all have to be a permanent shit show in your life, and life doesn't always have to suck? Like, wouldn't you want to think that's possible? I would.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like thinking about your must be nice comment, right? Yeah, I don't if anyone was to say like, they just perceive my life or anyone's life as being so great, I guess I'll use myself as an example. Like, I don't perceive as like having a lot of difficulties, but that's my perception, right? So if you put someone else exactly in my shoes, they might be like, this is the hardest shit ever experienced, or they might be like, oh, this is so much easier than my life, right? So a lot of it comes down to like perception. And also, I mean, particularly as me as an example, I feel like I have a lot of people that like rely on me for things. So there's like a lot of background stress, right? I mean, the issues are not just like front and center, but
No,
it's just always in the back of my mind. Yeah, must be nice is an interesting thing people say. It's like I've been working 60 hours a week for how many years now? I put in the work. What do you mean?
Must be nice that you had that opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, but I even look at like, okay, so in the context of your family, right? Like,
Yeah.
I look at one of my sisters has it seemingly easy.
Okay.
Like from the outside world, life, actually two of them, life looks glorious. Like,
right.
And I have a window. I have a window into their lives. Like, we're very close. And I'm like, the shit they've had to go through, the stuff they'd had to face, the things that have happened that people don't necessarily know about, because you're not going to necessarily put everything on blast. There's the whole social media is the highlight reel. I'm like, yeah, try posting or talking about it when you can't brush your teeth. Like, yeah, it's not necessarily going to happen. And not only that, there's some things back when those things happened that social media didn't exist or wouldn't be allowed on the internet. So it's like, well, or at least on those platforms. So I think, and also it's relative. I was talking to my mom and her sister are like really close, but they're very different. My mom is very determined. I would say her and my aunt are both high anxiety, or high stress people, like very like making sure everything are just right, to like getting things in place. Like, I can remember, I'm so sorry, Mom, that I'm outing you. My mom and I would absolutely go toe to toe when I was younger. And she laid into me one day and was like, and in fairness, like looking back, I could have done something differently. But she laid into me saying, you come in and you make this kitchen a disaster. You are so disrespectful. And I was like, oh my God, she's like real. I was like, what is she talking? Like, and I'm like, I can't think of what's happening. I could have just washed it, but I put a spoon in the sink.
She I don't think that's a reflection on you.
but also it would have taken 5 seconds. But we were talking earlier this week where it's like, I fill my time with things that aren't downtime. I'm working on that. I have downtime scheduled this weekend to paint. So it's not really downtime. But I was like, I told you earlier, I was like, I gotta do dishes. like they're piling up. Like I gotta manage that. But for me, what's more important is the other things. So I prioritize that. So me putting a spoon in the sink that I know I'm going to wash, but not in that moment, because I'm just moving. I've got 5 seconds before I got to jump on the next thing. Well, there's room for me to learn there too. It's like, okay, so why are you filling it so full that the other things aren't wouldn't you love to not have dishes in the sink? I'm like, yeah, but you know what I love more? I love going to CrossFit at 6 a.m. and going to bed at 8 o'clock at night. Like I work a lot. I have a lot of other things, goals. So it's like, is it really? But I will say the spoon thing. I'm so sorry, Mom, but it's true that happened. I have witnesses.
I definitely, I'm definitely the same way with that sort of stuff. Like I don't really have people over very much anymore. So just because I'm always like leaving to go to the office to work to do whatever, right? So yeah, typically the dishes pile up, and the laundry is never, put away or done. It's just a big mountain. And I mean, to be fair, if someone is coming over, I do a full clean. I won't present like a slob to anyone. I will just live in it on my own, which I feel maybe a lot of people do. They just won't admit that they do. But yeah, that's interesting.
Isn't it? What do you think has you prioritize that? Like, I mean, if you're not doing the dishes, if you're not doing the laundry, like the clean laundry is just a clean mountain that you select from when you need it. Like what do you think you're choosing over that? What's more important to you?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, how would I have like a hierarchy of importance, I would say maybe. Yeah, definitely the work stuff is like almost always foremost in front of my mind. And not in a stressful way, just like in like, oh, I just like can't wait to get back to it, right? Which is like a gift to have that experience. I guess that you could apply must be nice to that, right? Because this is probably like a lot of people, most people who don't get to experience that. So I'm aware of that. But yeah, and then kind of I tried to simplify, because I knew I was taking on so much in terms of like career and work. So all of the other things that you have to be responsible for as a functioning adult, like your eating, your exercise, like all that. What I did this year was I just really dumbed it down. I think I have walked to work every single day since maybe May or June or something, right? And it's a 30-minute walk one way. So it's like an hour of walking I'm doing every day. And that, you're not gonna get ripped or build muscle doing that, right? But just the fresh air, the sunlight, the walking is actually like, good for heart and whatever. But just dumbing it down. Don't overwhelm yourself, I would say, is my recommendation. If you are if you have like a distribution of responsibilities that you laid out in front of yourself, if you're shoving most of your hours into one thing, then just kind of water it down just to maintain in the other things. You don't it's really difficult to grow end to end everything up all at once, right? But then also understand that this first thing that you're putting the majority of your energy and your time into, it's not like that level of performance is not sustainable for like super long periods of time.
Totally. I look at it and I look in the world of like peak performance. And if I was to approach the thing I want the most as if the same way a person who's chasing the Olympics is, life looks a little different, And so the way they eat matters, the way they train matters, how they sleep matters, and everything is focused on that one goal. Right. So for me, I'm reevaluating what that one goal is for me right now. Like I love reinventing myself. I love doing that. I've done it. I think I've told you I've had like 7 different industries under my belt, like changed careers,
No, what are they?
Oh my God, really? We haven't had this conversation?
I've only ever known you as like a marketing guru.
Oh, I thank you. So for those of you who don't know, I don't publicize that I do marketing because I don't.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my God. No. This is the people should know, or people might want to know, because what I do, I don't believe is marketing. My goal is to inspire, like touch, move, and inspire people. Like I want people to be so connected with whatever their that's related to them specifically. I want their lives improved. So what I'm doing isn't marketing. What I'm doing is connecting the right person with the right product or service. I'm putting the right people on the team. I'm creating the culture that sustains performance. And that to me is not marketing. That's the alchemy of success. So it takes a lot of things to put them together to get them into the forefront. And so, I mean, it's interesting because I would not call myself a marketing guru, but a lot of the people who know me, the first person they call for marketing is me. I'm like, well, why? Why would you do that? But I mean, it goes to show that I don't always perceive myself how others perceive me, which is probably the same thing for most people in the history of time. So what have I done? Well, I've done everything. I was very strategic in university. Like I was called Cinderella. Like I was like, I got to be in bed before midnight. Like I can't do this. How you sat at a bar, I would die. Couldn't do it. It was like even midday. I was like, this is I'm tired. This is not for me. So I would do retail, and I would pick shopping centers that closed at specific hours so I could have my ass in bed at a very reasonable hour. I was 80 at the gentle age of 19 or maybe 30, whatever it was. I knew how I worked. I knew how I thrived. So I did that. I taught at Shumka dancers have a dance camp, and I was one of their coordinators for their summer camps for a few years. And then I taught musical theater. Here, my winning moment with musical theater was when I was hired to do it. And for this one location, they didn't have a piano. And I was like, ooh, how would you like me to do this? And so, in the world of grit, in the world of figuring things out and being resourceful, I somehow taught 9 to 12-year-olds 4-part harmony without a piano.
What?
I was committed. And I think that
task.
You know what? Nothing is impossible. This is what I've learned. And that's actually a great reminder for me to being like, well, when you actually know what your desired outcome is, which for me, it was like end of the week, 1 hour long show to show their parents, to show them that they can learn lines. They need a chance for self-expression. Like I was like, this is what's happening. And when you have this is what's happening, the how is irrelevant. The how is irrelevant. You figure out the how.
So I actually give or have given friends, a similar piece of advice to kind of what you're saying. I worded a little differently, right? So I say, or they just like, this person might be feeling like super overwhelmed, or they're just like, oh my God, like, how am I this thing seems insurmountable. This is impossible, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't reflect on the last 5 or 10 years of your life. I guarantee you there are A, B, and C times where you made something happen that in the moment you thought it was impossible. So you've already done impossible things. Like it's in like a history book, essentially. Like it's been done before. So why are you worried this time? I mean, just do the work and the impossible thing will happen.
It's incredible what you can do. So I think that's a great question for people to walk away with. Like, what have you done that's impossible, or that at the time, and this seemingly impossible, right? So you start, and at that level, I was like, how am I going to do this? I'm under-resourced. I don't have the time. Like, what are the things people complain about? Time, money. There's usually 3 things. I don't know. There's usually 3 things people.
Well, I don't know what the 3 things are. Time. Yeah. People like
I don't have time.
Get in their own way, make excuses, right? And I'm super guilty of that. I for sure do it all the time, I feel, but yeah,
I'm literally looking it up. There's it's the 3 made that, I guess that's like the 3 standard. When you look it up, it's like the 3 standard objections to any sales pitch.
I see. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know, sales objections, time, money, something or other. Anyways, the point is there's going to be things that you don't have. Time, money, resources, whatever. I'm like, money is a resource and so is time, but there could be like, we don't have enough people. We don't have my husband doesn't say yes. I'm all alone. I'm like, to me, I'm like, how the 6-minute mile wasn't a 6-minute mile till it was a 6-minute mile, and the 4-minute mile wasn't. People literally thought your body would explode, which is why trains had a speed limit for a while, because they thought at a certain point, if you went too fast, the human body would disintegrate. And now we go to outer space.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Allegedly go to, I don't know, man. I've never been, couldn't tell you. I don't actually, there's a lot of things I don't have a desire to do. That's one of them. I also don't really have a desire to go to super densely populated areas. I'm more of a more trees, less people kind of gal.
I think as I get older, another very old man thing to say, one of the things that brings me like the most joy is going out to my grandparents' cabin. And it's just like, just even when it's like terrible weather out there, it's just like so nice to be out there and not stare at a computer screen or hear fire trucks. Oh man, I complain. I live downtown, right? And I complain about the fire trucks nonstop. And the funny thing about fire trucks is there's actually never a fire. It's just protocol for them to show up to things. But I'm not an expert on emergency services, so maybe that's all I should say about it.
Honestly, I don't know anything.
I was gonna say, you were talking about time and money, and I'd come up with this saying about money that maybe makes no sense to anybody except for me. But you know what, once you get past a certain point in all of your kind of needs are taken care of in terms of like basic needs, shelter, food, all that stuff. Really, to me, money is just something that provides the time and space to make better decisions. Right. So you might, so the thing I think of is like people who don't eat very well, and they complain that, you know, they have to do the fast food route. They have to go to McDonald's or whatever, or because other methods of doing things are too expensive. And I'm like I don't know. So they just feel like this maybe this pressure or stress because they, you know, are a little bit low on money, so that they just take the quick option, the worst decision essentially for the long term. But imagine if you had double the money, you could sit there and think about and research the decision you're going to make. And then you just have like this time and space, and you can be comfortable and relaxed and make the best decision possible. And that's like just kind of what I was thinking about one time.
I love this conversation. Let's keep going. So convenience can be a really big pull for people to make decisions. And there's so much that is so convenient that we'll pay for the convenience. Like I mean, I don't drink milk, but for not ethical reasons. I just don't, I think it's weird, man. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it.
Like dairy, like cow's milk is so delicious. I haven't bought cow's milk in years. Like I stopped drinking it because I thought that it was like flaring up my skin, and it probably was or whatever. So I was trying to quell that, but my opinion is that it's fantastic. I
think if I went back to drinking milk, I would have to go for like a really fatty milk. Like give me 3% or homo. Like I want like, I think what I like about it is actually, I don't want creamy water. No, that is not for me. Like when back in the day, so for listeners who don't know me now or haven't seen this journey that are not privy to it, I used to be driven wildly by convenience and caffeine. So I would do a lot to stay awake because I believed staying awake would make me more productive. And so that really, whether it was at work, whether it was with my grades or whatever, and I would have just trash. I would drink essentially poison. I'm going to call it what it is. Not essentially, it is. It's poison. If you look at the ingredients and you learn those things, sometimes you can't go back, and I haven't gone back. Needless to say, I would order these chemically ridden drinks that were caffeinated, but convenient. And then I would ask myself, why do I feel like absolute garbage? And I would assume because I was stressed and I wasn't putting it together, but I gave myself a little bit of time, space, allowed myself to reevaluate. And I was like, oh, wow, I was wrong about that. And that willingness to be wrong and to what is way more convenient is for me to feel full of vitality, high energy, creative, clear-headed. That convenience is worth me making my own coffee, my own mushroom mocha latte, which is my favorite right now. 5 harmonics, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. I just have to
Little
say,
plug.
I'm like, they don't sponsor me, but everyone really, if you
Yeah.
can have that, if you're not wildly allergic or morally opposed, whatever, to mushrooms, they are like, it's chaga and reishi and cordyceps and lines and all of these things that, had I known what I know now, I would have been drinking this in university instead of and I'm like, okay, you buy the container, and up front, the sunk cost can feel atrocious because it's very confronting. But where your money goes is where your priority is. And if you zoom out and you look at your, I don't know, bank statement, credit card statement, you see where you're spending your money, you can be very humbled or snapped into a reality where, like, oh my God, this is what I believe here's what I say I care about. And here's how I spend my money. And these things really should probably line up. If you want to lead a life that's full of, like, of the things you say you're up to, the things you say you're committed to, if you're saying this and doing this, something else completely not aligned, the person who's shooting you in the foot is you.
Yeah, that's a lesson I picked up. I briefly lived with one of my best friends. I think I was 24, and it was my first time living with someone who wasn't a family member, and he had just bought a house, and I it was right after school, just kind of had the first job going, and so we'd obviously split the chores now, so just the two of us living there. And I'm kind of just like, hey, I'll just adapt to whatever the environment is. Like, I really appreciate, like, having a place to live and a room and my own bathroom and stuff. And so we just kind of set the chores and we communicate about what needs to happen, right? And there's, a string of times where I kept dropping the ball on whatever the home care responsibilities were. And then one day he just, like, when he like confronts you as a friend, it's like very stern and you feel bad. So yeah, one day he came up to me and he was just like having this conversation with me, like looking me dead in the eyes. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like my parent is like yelling at me. And he's just said something along the lines of like, hey, if you say you're gonna do something, just do it. There's nothing more to it than that. And it just, like, the way it was delivered and the moment and everything, and it just, like, stuck with me. And I literally, it was 6 years later, I think about it every week. I'm like, okay, you have all these responsibilities. Why, like, dwell on all these other factors of just, if you say you're going to do something, just do it, or at least make the attempt to the best of your ability. Being like, letting yourself get paralyzed by these other, influences doesn't help anyone. And I think, your relationships across the board will appreciate you, keeping your word, sort of thing. So
keeping your word is the absolute baseline for integrity. And there was one of these courses I took, and it just mind blown, eyes open, eyes wide and wise to my reality, was that, when you are not of your word, when you break integrity and you don't restore it or address it, there is a very severe impact. And it's not just what you've done to someone else, but it's what you're learning about you that you know about you. And so what promises are you breaking to yourself when you set your alarm for 6 to go to the gym and you're like, I'm just going to hit snooze 20 times? What promise? Like, you've already started the day by breaking promises to yourself. When you don't deliver, let's say we had an agreement and I will take out the garbage and you will mow the lawn, and that doesn't happen. Well, it's teaching that person that they can't trust you or trust what you say or do. And then there's some, like, dissonance and tension in the relationship. And if you want things to flow, you got to clear that up. You got to deal with it. And so how do you clean it up? And, well, take responsibility. No one's job to clean it up. If you are out of integrity, your job is to clean it up, not someone else, not someone else to ask you, hey, Lee, I noticed you didn't do the thing you said you were going to do. Like, that's not that person's job. It's your job. And I think when we have people that operate, that way, people are happier. There's less stress and tension because there's no one telling stories in their head. Like, they might not even be gossiping, but you don't think someone's like, well, he's certainly inconsiderate. That's super rude. He does not care about this house. He doesn't actually like living here. He doesn't value me as a friend. And all of this nonsense is happening. And you probably just got distracted by how productive you were at work or whatever it was, right?
Mhm.
Like it doesn't necessarily have to be malintent, but the outcomes can be very damaging.
Have you ever lived with a significant other?
Lee, don't out me. No,
I don't mean to out you. I'm just wondering.
I have not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, neither have I really. Like, as an adult.
I
So
haven't lived with a significant other when I was little either, like as an adult or as a child. Like
yeah. I mean, yeah. So I'm just wondering how that would go for us, because we just like have lived by ourselves for.
I've had people live with me, just not a spouse
okay.
or a partner.
I see,
like,
I see.
so I've had a lot of practice with my sisters. So when I bought my place, I was like 2 primary suites. Everyone has an ensuite. So was there just a big flash? Did you see that? Strange. Okay. I mean, I love this living on this side of the city because we're the first to get storms, and that might be lightning, and that excites me. But I had 2 separate sisters live with me at 2 different intervals. And one sister and I have the same coaching training, personal development training, not 100%, but like there's like probably 60 to 80% overlap. So we use the same language so we can clean up our junk real fast. And she's also taken like some of the same courses we've done with like Chris Voss and whatnot. And so you know what they're doing, the strategy they're using to communicate, but communication is simply a tool. It's not to manipulate, it's to get clarity, it's to get to a destination. And when she was here, we naturally are very different people. I'm chipper, cheery, lovely. Mornings are my favorite time of day. Like I wake up, it's like Cinderella, Snow White. Like I've got birds chirping, life is great. Not her, not a morning gal. In fact, don't say hello. And I'm like, I have to learn how and so in the morning for a long time, I thought she hated me. I was like, she hates me. It's in the middle of the pandemic. So like, we're stuck here. She had just moved back from the States. And I was like, this is not good. This is bad. And in the morning, I'm doing stuff. And so at some point we had to have a conversation being like, it really feels like you absolutely hate me. She's like, I thought it is lightning. I'm very thrilled. It's absolutely lightning. And she was like, I think you don't like me. And I was like, oh, once you just say what's already there.
Right. So these people you've known your whole life, and you still, there's an element of just like, you kind of know how to play off of them but at some point you do need to communicate still, right?
I would okay, so for you may not know this, but growing up it was not good. Like I would say my sisters and I weren't friends.
Yeah.
Like there was tension in the sister I was talking about, there was tension, and I would almost say animosity between us for years, and I don't think we talked for a couple years somewhere in our young adult years, because we just could not stand each other. Like what for whatever reason, we just totally grated on one another. And like that's a worthy opponent makes an excellent teacher.
Growing up though, were you a know-it-all?
I know I was a rule follower.
So you're a rule follower,
like steadfast, absolutely. Like if I went into school and they said, take your shoes off at the end of this carpet, do not take your outdoor shoes in, I would make my mom take off her shoes. I'm like, you cannot pass. I am sorry. But I super big rule follower, ultra goody 2 shoes, had to have A's. Otherwise I was like, no. Must be I was a little bit perfectionist. And I would say my sisters had a lot of the same thing too. But what I prioritized was peace and conformity to maintain like what felt safe. And what she probably prioritized from the outside, and I can't really say this is her experience, but what I perceived is that she needed to be the best. I wanted to keep the peace, and for me that was like, you getting 100% means you're not going to get yelled at by your parents. And for her, it's like, no, I'm going to be better than everyone. And that's what it felt like from the outside. And she was very good. She was quite competitive. And I would say I was not. I would still say I am not. I get not good. I don't like competition. It makes me nervous. Unless it's a safe environment, in which case I will compete, but or be competitive, at least with myself. But my God, it took even knowing each other and going through that part where we didn't get along or like each other or when sometimes you've just decided someone's a certain way and you're like, no matter what he says, he's such a jerk. He's like so human selfish.
Nature, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. We label people, we form dichotomies, good, bad, right, wrong, left, right, up, down. And so she's this way and I am this way. And like, just went in with that. And rather than hearing things freshly, newly from a new perspective, really asking if what I believed was true, I just maintained a label on her that caused tension for years. And I mean, honestly, she did the same thing too. And then as adults with this development, so you'd think because we're sisters, you think that exposure to each other for 30 years would have given us a leg up. My God, thank goodness for personal development. My God, thank goodness for communication classes. My God, thank God for coaches. Like that entire curriculum transformed my family. So yeah, I mean, the sister thing wasn't an advantage, I would say. It wasn't not an advantage.
I don't see my siblings and myself taking a workshop together.
I mean, what I will say about my family is we really want each other to win at life. Like we want, like you want to live on an acreage. Oh my gosh. You want to not live anywhere. You want to just like stay in Airbnbs for the rest of your life. Cause that's the life that, oh my God, do it. How can I help you? Like, what do you need? I totally believe that you could do that. And I think that has really been one of the like absolute tenets of my sister, my sisterhood with my sisters, is that we champion each other's goals. Because there's a lot of people you shouldn't tell your goals to. There are people who are going to squash your goals that can't see what's possible. And what you had mentioned earlier in our conversation was like, there's some people, who just stay in their world and are super competitive and like, they don't want to talk about it. I'm like, when you don't talk about it, you stop seeing possibility. And when you start sharing, gates open up, ideas open up, ideas flood in. Why are you limiting yourself?
Yeah, I would say I probably share too much for a lot of people. Some of my friends, I feel like they just like are put off by like the ideas or the thoughts that I share maybe, but that's maybe because they're just like, they're just not like, I would consider myself a dreamer, right? So if they're just not like that, that's like a rational thought and they just can't wrap their head around it. And it is completely irrational. Like doing everything from like starting a business is one of the most irrational things you can do, right? Like it makes no sense.
Statistically, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. The success rate of a startup is like 90% of them fail, right? And so things like that. So you do have to be careful but I would rather overshare than not share, right? Because the amount of feedback I've gotten from the sharing in general outweighs the negative feedback I've gotten. So
yeah, I posted something the other day that was like, in 3 generations, everyone who knows you will be dead. Like,
I saw that. Yeah.
And it's so like, so why are you so worried about going for that crazy idea? And how many times have I made a decision based on like the fear of it not working out rather than the like, how awesome would it be if this did work out? And that is one thing this year that line in the sand has changed for me. Be bold, be brave, all in, all out is whenever I do something, I'm like, okay, be bold, be brave, all in, all out. And courage isn't that you're doing things and you feel good about it. Courage is when you do things and you're still scared, or you still have fear or trepidation or nervousness or uncertainty, and you're doing it anyways. And why would you not? There are so many things that would not have happened had someone not had courage or like withstood this, like, oh my God, the people that have gotten ridiculed and like, this will never work, and that have made the difference. The internet was laughable. The internet was laughable.
Literally any sort of invention or innovation was a bunch of people telling a very finite amount of people that this is stupid, it'll never work. Like literally every one of them, right? Because people, probably the majority of people want to just, have their comfortable status quo, and any sort of risk outside of their happy zone is terrifying and irrational for them. And that's how you're wired, right? That's fear, is essentially saying like, hey, don't, step in this direction because you might not survive. And so, yeah, the people who are able to override that instinct, hopefully in a responsible way, are the ones that probably see the most success.
Well, I think also it's learning how to override. I think everyone can override. And this is where I actually have a future guest coming that will talk about this, but the ability to know how to regulate your nervous system, because leaving your job for a startup could be what your brain doesn't know the difference between that. And as I've mentioned multiple times, in other podcasts, a mountain lion chasing you. It doesn't know the difference. It's like, this could mean death. Do you understand this is your livelihood? And your nervous system does what it does. And it's designed to protect you. It's designed to help you, but it doesn't know. It's not a mountain lion. And there's a lot of jobs out there that doesn't know, but it can feel really, and again, it must be nice to just be willing to leave your job. But I'm like, what's it costing you to stay? What's it costing you to stay? And okay, what's it costing you to not do that? Would you, if you looked back and were like, oh man, I really wish I would have just started that podcast. Oh man, I really wish I would have developed that app. Oh, I really wish I would have insert the thing. Well, what you have no idea. And the opportunity cost is so unknown. And since we can't figure it out in our brains, we often don't do it because we're like, well, we don't know. It could be really good. It could be really bad. And I'm trying to leave more room for it could be really good. It could be really good.
So sometimes fear can be like a total illusion, right? Because just a simple example I like to use is people are terrified of flying, but statistically, it's the safest way to travel, right? And so just like apply that to a bunch of different situations. It's like, yeah, I mean, your brain has this instinct, and you made it this far off of that, but sometimes your brain, your experience is so subjective always, right? That's experience by definition. So.
It's relative, right? And like I didn't finish it earlier, but like comparing my aunt to my mom, they have a lot of the same traits, but if you had put them in each other's shoes, I don't know if they would have survived. But they are both, my mom was like, oh, she has it so easy. I'm like, yeah, no, she doesn't. I don't know if she would say that now, but like growing up, that was her perception. I was like, this is the adversity she had to deal with. This is the things people had said about her. This is like, you don't see that. And those social pressures, we can be like, well, that's not that bad. It's just social pressures. I'm like, yeah, but social pressures are why people find themselves making very permanent life-ending decisions. Bullying, things like that. People have literally ended their lives over words. So flipping each other's circumstances could make you not handle it regardless. And so stress is relative, experience is relative, and you just don't understand that person's experience and start to finish. It builds your lens. It builds how you think, see things, and interact with the world. And if you're not present to that, there's no way I could understand your experience fully. And one of the things you crave as a person is to be connected with someone and to be understood by someone. And so to feel understood isn't necessarily to be understood. Can you hear that rain and thunder?
I think I heard the thunder initially. Yeah, I was concerned it was my mic, but
no. Sorry, Dream Team.
Would you say people who crave that feeling of safety, do you think they see any growth ever?
I don't think it's not possible. I think it's very hard to know. Okay, well, for all of you listening, if you can hear the rain, it's now just ambient noise. Enjoy it. This could be your like little lullaby. for sleepy time. I can't control that, unfortunately. Or maybe I can and I just don't know yet. So do people who prioritize safety over everything, do they grow? That was your question?
Yes.
Okay. I think the pursuit of safety itself will require people to grow in certain ways. Now, does it make them thrive? Not necessarily, but does it have them stay alive and survive? Even the plants that survive outside, they grow a little. They just they're not their fullest expression. And now I don't know if that's my fully formulated, completely articulated thought, but I just don't see how. I think you stunt your growth. And your potential is your latent potential is so massive. How often do we tap into all things that are possible for us? And what I think people could really benefit from is if you really asked yourself, what do I deeply desire? Because a desire is enduring. A desire maintains itself so I desire a podcast. Okay, I've created a podcast. I still want it, even though I already have it. I could have been like, oh, I finished 14 episodes. I have a podcast. I still own it. What's the point? Well, I still desire it, so I still do it. Or it's like marrying someone. That's the person you desire. You want to choose them every day for the rest of your life. It's enduring. And so my offer is that find what you desire, something that's enduring. So one of my enduring desires is contribution. One of my enduring desires is that people have their life fulfilled in a way that they love. So that marketing component that I do, that success alchemy component I do is all tied to that. And that enduring desire has me continuing to show up, has me continuing to pursue growth, has me continually being open to opportunities, ideas, and like moments of intervention, be them divine or human initiated. And it allows me to continue to grow and thrive. So connect with what you desire, because your desires are not going to be the same as everybody else's. If everyone only thought a certain type of person is attractive, there would be way more single people.
Well, on that note, the latest statistics off of like dating apps like Tinder is like,
good, man.
It's like, is what I forget the exact numbers, but it's like super skewed, right? It's
also the Pareto distribution on an app, by the way.
It's like 80% of women only swipe for 30% of men, or even a lower number than that.
Yeah.
And then it's like kind of the inverse, where it's like, the majority of men swipe on like way more women, right? And so it is a Pareto distribution. You have like these women that are just
highly selective for mates, because
I
have theories on that. So like so my first degree was in psychology. Loved it. Again, I went to school to fix me. I could have spent that $40,000 on therapy, but instead I got a degree. Anyways, one of the things that was interesting is that when you look at psychology, evolution, and biology, when they come together, women or females tend to be highly selective with mates. Usually they look for specific things, interesting, also related, but interesting. Birth control changes. Like hormonal birth control will change what kind of men or males, females are attracted to. Fascinating. And females will change who they're attracted to changes if they're not on hormonal birth control and they have their full hormonal cycle. Different points in the cycle have different types of characteristics being attractive. Crazy. Fun times. Anyways, with that, it makes sense, because if the goal of a species, if what the species and a reptilian brain is meant to do is men to spread their seed, or males to spread their seed, and females to be cautious, selective, and give their offspring the best possible chance for survival, how can you escape it? So that is from a psychoevolutionary biological perspective. So if that's not something that you're leaning to, but like that, I mean, it's not necessarily my thought, but that is a theory out there. And I'm like, wow, that is fascinating that it's possible that again, those distributions make sense, or could make sense, could have an explanation.
But the dating apps certainly don't convey, you're doing a kind of a reactive decision, right?
It's Russian roulette with people.
Yeah. So like me, like personally, I would obviously I've used them, and I would much rather, you know, interact with someone, meet someone for the first time organically,
Mm.
like through a friend, or at an event somewhere, something like that, right? I feel like I feel like on these dating apps, like my sense of humor doesn't come across at all. Like people probably think I'm the most boring person ever, which, you know, it could be their opinion or whatever, but I just seem to have better dating luck when it's in person for sure.
Dating is so I've decided to give dating a whirl again.
Okay, congrats. That's
Thank you. Thank you. Be bold, be brave, all in,
we,
all out.
we just talked about courage.
Yeah, it's something else. And the stories are just so interesting. Here's what I have found is that if people like to me, I'm like, give me the information I can use to filter in and out rapidly, because there's going to be some things that are non-negotiables. Like for me, ideally, if I could have a wave of magic wand and have things my way, I would have a family of my own. I think the physical experience of growing a being, I want to know what that's like. I want to know. Like, I mean, it could be awful. Maybe I don't want to know, but it also could be, I like experiencing things. That seems really interesting. You can take something from a half of a something and create a whole thing that has all the bits that work theoretically. Wow, that's fast. Anyways, whatever. There's a lot of people who won't put that on or not, or that I find that men will say, I don't want kids, but what they mean is I don't want kids right now.
Oh, I was gonna say with you.
No, that's on my filters. They haven't even met me yet.
No, I mean like proverbial, like the person they're talking to, not just
my God.
you specifically.
No. Well, that hurt. Ouch.
Sorry.
I would say I have genetic anomalies, and I can understand why maybe that would be not the ideal solution. But what I found is I'm like, okay, well, I think men are, at least for me, men use the app differently. I'm like, I'm not asking right now. I'm asking in the next 3, 5, 10 years. What does your life look like? Do you have, like, for me, wellness is super important. I like being active. I like doing things. I like having fun. I like working out. I love family. My family's amazing. I won the family lottery. Like, I have just the best sisters. Like, and you know what? Marry me, marry my sisters. It's a package deal. I don't know what to tell you. They come along, and everyone's really close and tight. And so it's, how do you convey that across an app? I had someone unmatch me. So I was like, hey, we were planning for a Saturday, and I was like, yeah, I can do, like, here's the days I'm available. I'm open to suggestions for where you want to go. And he said, this establishment. I was like, okay, it's a franchise. That particular location, I know, doesn't have the best patio. It's Alberta. We get summer for very, very limited amount of time. I'm like, well, why not? This location has a great patio. Boom, unmatches me. I was like, oh my God. And like part of me is like, I wonder what was going through his head, which I think is also what you said, like what was happening. Cause it could be like, she's high maintenance, she's this, that, like, but all I was like, is like, it's Alberta. I'm basically a human house plant. I just want some sunshine.
You know, we did mention, you did mention this a couple of days ago or whatever, and my thought was exactly the same. I was like, what is the psychology behind this person? Because I would actually think that's a turn on, that a woman told me exactly where she wanted to go. Because you like, in the past, very frequently you ask, you know, hey, you want to go out for dinner or drinks? Like, what's your favorite spot? What kind of food do you want? And
I
like,
don't know. I don't know.
And then you're like, okay, cool. Well, I'll, you know, maybe I'll book like a table at Cactus Club, and try to do, you know, it's Cactus Club. It's not fancy, but it's like nice
Or
to go
they go,
to.
oh, I don't eat at Cactus.
And
you're like,
well, no, then you go there, and then they get the $20 chicken fingers, and you're like, okay, that's fine, but why didn't you just say you wanted chicken fingers and that's all you eat? We would have gone to the chicken place.
yeah, like, you don't like, there's a lot of great chicken places here. Like, you want chicken? I got at least 5 you should try. It's so curious. I think this also goes back to say what you like. You can say what you want. You don't have to be a jerk about it, but you're like, hey, listen, I really great, cool. I'd love to try this location, or I mean, who knows? when something happens like that, this is often like, and if anyone who's running into this, and there's people who are being very reactive, if they're not if they're not curious and they're just reacting, it's a trigger for them or an activation. And here's the thing is that if I have a gun and it doesn't have its safety on, which I think is a thing on guns. I don't really know. I've only ever
They have safeties. Yeah.
They have safeties. I watched this on YouTube about it once upon a time. And you don't have the safety on your gun. And I'm just holding it, and I'm holding the top and the bottom, and I'm not touching any. If someone else pulls the trigger, I'm going to erupt. But the whole point of managing your triggers is for you to put the safety in. You know if the safety is in or not. And so the safety is often curiosity. And if you're getting inflamed or having this massive emotional reaction and you're going from 0 to 100 in seconds, it's probably not that person that did something wrong. It's probably reminding you of something you haven't dealt with. And it's just showing up in that person, and they remind you enough. It's what's called the just noticeable difference or action potential. When you cross for like a neuron, you can press on something, you can touch something just enough and people don't feel it. You press a little harder and it's felt. And so there's something that takes it from not responding to responding. And it's when that switch flips, something happened. Enough of something happened. But if it's that massive a reaction, it's probably not this particular circumstance. And I'm sure there's exceptions, but generally, look at you. Look at you. When I'm triggered or activated and like losing my marbles, I'm like, okay, well, what does this remind me of? When have I experienced this before?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, dang, grade 2, that's a memory. And I'm like, oh, it actually has nothing to do with this person. This person's just asking. And I take myself out. I give myself a chance to neuroregulate, calm my nervous system down, get out of, your sympathetic nervous system, getting out of your dorsal vagal and getting into your ventral vagal, where you're able to connect, be curious, have solutions. Because the stuff that created the problem, the reaction that created the problem, and I don't mean your necessarily outward reaction, but your internal reaction is not the place where you're going to have your best solution. You're going to have a survival solution.
So that what I heard you, there goes the lightning. What I heard you describing there was an ability to reflect, but reflect with wisdom. And so that's like a superpower, right? Like that's incredible. So I find like people with like they typically say like depression, for example, because people like live in the past, right? And so it's reflecting in a sense. You're like thinking about past, typically failures, not successes. But if you could filter it through some sort of wisdom, then you only tune in on the important pieces, right? Like wisdom, in my opinion, is kind of just like tuning a radio, right? Like there's a ton of noise coming at you, but it's the ability to select the important pieces. So yeah, reflection with a filter of wisdom. It sounds like you got that figured out.
Well, not all the time, but when I know that when I'm charged, I'm like, uh-oh. And again, with my sisters, with the personal development, we have names for our charged people. Like, oh, and like, if this is your name, don't be insulted, because the trick is to find out who you're being and name it so that you don't take that on as your identity. It's not that a certain person's name is a certain way. It's like, okay, so one of my sisters, her activated, charged, really difficult version is named Stephanie. We have a cousin named Stephanie. She's lovely. She's amazing. But Amber just is like, no, that Stephanie isn't me. That's just the highly reactive, negative, not working version of me. For me, it's Becky. Like my sister's like, oh my gosh, am I talking to Clarissa or am I talking to Becky? And I'm like, oh yeah, good point. So having people in your circle who can share those, because I can't always recognize I'm in my junk, but someone else can. And with those people that I call them my people of possibility, like the people who can see things bigger than me. Like, how we talked about not sharing your goals with everyone. Those people also know when I'm taking myself out, because the biggest obstacle you have when you start your own business, when you have a passion project, when you do it, your biggest obstacle is you. Your biggest obstacle is you. And so having people who know when you're in the space where you can win the way you want to win versus win the game you hate winning, I'm so grateful that I have a charged Surface.
I was gonna say, did your internet not just go out? It didn't. You're good.
It didn't. I'm good. Like, I want to know what I said in that moment. Was it divine?
Oh my goodness. It might have been. We'll replay it.
We'll replay it. We'll find out. That was fun. But yeah, having those people support you so that you can, because the game you are playing is the game you will win. So if I'm winning, I could be winning the game of it doesn't work out. I could be winning the game of everyone's annoying. I could be winning the game. Like, what game do you want to win at? Whatever game you're playing is the game you're winning. So asking myself what that is. And when Becky comes out, she's just so obstinate and like critical and just ugh.
I think what you described for a moment there is that just kind of stood out to me when you said having someone around that can tell you kind of when you're in your funk, just so you like give you that awareness so that you can reel it in and just like take a step back and you're like, oh yeah, kind of wasn't that mood or whatever. Like that characteristic is like for sure something I would look for in a partner. But like how do you get to that point? I feel like you have to spend like so much time with someone so that it's not a criteria on a dating app, I'll tell you that.
Oh my God, no, it's not. But let me okay, let's talk about criteria on dating no criteria for your people. Forget dating apps because dating apps are whatever.
Okay, so before we get to it though, when you mentioned on the dating apps, when you put you want kids and you said, oh, I don't know if that scares men away. Like, I don't want it now, like in 3 years or whatever. It's funny you say that because I'm thinking whenever I see it, my reaction is like, if I look at their age and then I look that's their option, I see like, oh, older than 25. I'm like within 12 months for sure. And I am not ready for that. So I'm just like,
that's so interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm like, because what we both did was we made up a story about it. We took information that meant nothing.
I tell
it's just information.
Myself the best stories.
You know what? We should write books. Why aren't we doing this? Yeah. New hobby. But yeah, it's interesting because for me, it's like, I want the apps as much of a whole picture as I can. But the truth is there is one person that I've met in my years of dating, and he broke every rule that I would have had for someone, like, or every standard. Everything I said was a non-negotiable. And I was like, and it was oh my God, I would do it again. He's incredible. So much respect and admiration for this person. Like, no one knows who he is. It's really fun. But he, like his wisdom, his smarts, his ambition, his willingness to try new things, his generosity, willingness to hear, like we held different political perspectives. We held different, like everything was opposite. And for some reason, the ability to communicate was so powerful that it overrode our differences. And the biggest obstacle why that didn't pan out was timing. And the one thing that I wanted most, he couldn't offer, which was children. And so I wasn't ready to give that up at the time. And I'm like, where do you draw the line between that's like, I'm at the age now where it's like, well, would you choose companionship knowing you're never going to have children? Or would you still want to hold out hope a little bit? And I don't know if I have the answer for that yet, but it's definitely one of my favorite questions I'm asked. Why haven't you been married and why don't you have kids? And I'm like, because I made the choice to not have kids with people I didn't want to raise children with. That's why. So
tell me about it.
I didn't marry the duds. I'm sorry.
Shout out to any listener who has a Ukrainian grandma. You don't hear the end of it really. As much as I love my grandma, I talk to her every once in a while. And it's, oh, you seeing anyone? Well, I was like, no, grandma, you'll be the first to know when there's someone. Yeah,
I'm like, and dating now is so interesting. It's so interesting. I have had some I will call them dramatic pursuits.
Oh,
you met one of the dramatic pursuits, and he seemed so lovely.
That was like there was a literal dramatic pursuit on a freeway.
I was like, if this works out, what a story.
That
I mean, I
story.
guess it's still a great story, but it's like, so people show up, they show interest. And I mean, that wasn't exactly 0 to 100. Maybe it was
Yeah.
thunderstrikes, but I mean, like everything after that meeting was very slowly paced, but then just was like, no, I got to focus on my son and raising my, oh, I hate that. I'm not answering that. I hate when the doorbell rings. Leave me alone.
I think that the thing I think maybe you're kind of touching on is when you said 0 to 100. I think that's one of the things I struggle with in dating, getting to know someone, because I'm like, people say they're an open book, but I like am like more than people that I.
You're a full-on PowerPoint. You're a 3D animated experience. Maybe you're a hologram.
Yeah, there's sound effects too. There's everything. No, and I think I honestly, you know, like between the two of us, we would prefer more than anything to behave in like an authentic way, or at least just like feel like, you know, the way we communicate is authentic and all that stuff. But you know, I've made enough attempts at it in the last in my 20s, and you know, sometimes like that authenticity, I guess I should say, brings it 0 to 100 real quick, it seems, and then one of us gets scared, right? It just like happens, it's overwhelming, or it happens too fast or something. But then, so if I try to do it the other way, where I like dial it way down, I think that the other person maybe thinks I'm like not interested, like I'm the perception's off, right? So
it is off. And you were telling me about one of your experiences, and I was just like, I don't really know how to do this anymore. Like, I don't get asking someone out and then not following through. I don't get that. I don't get pursuing someone and then freaking out. I don't get it. Like, you just pace it. You don't have to.
Definitely don't answer that. At least I'm like live on camera to see you get murdered.
That's not funny.
Is the door locked?
Let me check.
It's always locked. Come on.
If I could tell you how fast my heart is beating right now.
Yeah, I know. Maybe I shouldn't have made that joke. I know that gives you a lot of anxiety. Sorry. The look on your face just says it all.
I just need a second.
No worries. No worries.
That's fucking scary.
It's too quick through your nose and then out your mouth, and you do it 3 times. It like resets your nervous system.
Do you want to come over?
I can. I mean,
my house is upside down.
My goodness.
Like, makes me sick to my stomach.
Okay, we can stop if you need.
No, it's okay. Well, you know how I said, you know, there might be a part we need to edit out.
Well, yeah, I figured, you know what, I figured that, well, we've done it for 2 hours now. I figured you'd probably just edit a lot of it. And,
I don't think I will.
No, interesting. Okay.
Well, whatever. People can binge.
Can we talk about, you know what? Can we talk about spirituality?
Yes, please.
Okay, and the reason I want to bring this up is because, well, there's a couple reasons. So, I think that throughout my whole 20s, I was never like, I don't like believe in God, but I'm not an atheist, right? So, and I'm not like what's the in between? I forget what the word is. I'm not that either. I would consider myself spiritual, but I like finally was like honest with myself about it, and the reason, but there's actually like a reason behind it, or it's not like people do it through like a fear-based sort of thing or whatever. It's like and this is a quote from an author. His name is Arthur C. Brooks. I'm paraphrasing at least. Well, I listened to him on a podcast, and he said he's like an expert in happiness. And so he said there's evidence to suggest, like studies or whatever, that people who aren't spiritual in their teens or 20s have a tendency to become spiritual in their late 30s. And it apparently happens just based on like likely just a search for meaning sort of thing. And it almost kind of goes back to those, like I was talking about way earlier, the extrinsic motivations, like you kind of maybe run out of that fuel. And then so the other thing he was saying was that really the key to, or the reason why spirituality is like useful is because it is a mechanism of stepping outside yourself and like realizing that there's something bigger than yourself, right? And so yeah, so if you're so really the definition of like thinking that there's like a higher power or the universe or whatever you want to call it, it's like, yes, there's something that is like makes me like feel small, and there's something bigger out there. And so it can provide, you know, a source of connection to other people in that sense, or like the environment you live in. And it can also, I guess you can relate to it in terms of like, why do I even do things? I like doing things solely for yourself at all times. It doesn't really matter when there's this big thing happening around you.
I would say my spirituality started when I was a kid, and I can't tell you if it was real or not, but it felt so real that I was like, holy, this must be real. And like, it took how many near-death experiences I'm at? 5-ish. And so that first one, like, scared out of my tree. I had this massive surgery. My neck was cut open. Like, they removed lymph nodes. I had drainage tubes. I had something that happened to like 1 in 300,000 people, usually old people in the desert. I'm 5. It's the middle of winter. Like, I am a statistic. I'm an outlier. I'm a statistical exception.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay. And so, and it when you're stuck like this and you're a kid and you're developing, guess what happens? Your muscles shrink. Like, so this was like the most painful thing. I've like tilting my head from one side to center was excruciating. And I remember being at home, and I had this, it's a memory when it's like clear. I had gone to sleep, and my bed was I liked laying against the wall. Like, kids look for security. So when you navigate them from outside of a crib to a bed, they often pick like an edge against a wall or against a railing, which is why often parents put up those things, especially if you're like me, when I was in a household that had a lot of stress. And so I was craving security. So I'm uncomfortably sleeping with this tube coming out of my neck. Oh my God, it was so gross. There's a picture, and it's just so disgusting. And I'm against this wall, and I look over, and there's something in the corner. It's a thing. It's a being. I'm like, I am tripping. Like, I probably didn't know the words. I probably said, that's my imagination. I probably said, I'm thinking, I'm seeing things. It's not real. But like now knowing what I know, I'm like, I didn't feel like it was bad. I was a little bit scared because I wasn't certain, but that was my first breath into like, there might be something that I can't see. There's something else there that's not there. And I would say my entire family has had crazy instances of weird spiritual things, or like I joked about astral travel. But there was one vacation I was on, and I woke up in the night bawling, and I was like, something's wrong with my sister. And I'm like, weird. I'm in Orlando. I'm on the vacation of my dreams with my favorite people, my aunt and uncle. We're all doing this. Like, we love theme parks. We love water slides. Like, why am I waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in tears and sweat? Call my mom to go check on my sister, and stuff had gone sideways. Like, she was a physical mess. She had been attacked. And, I was like, how did you know? I was like, I don't know. And it could have been coincidence. I have no idea, but it didn't feel like coincidence. Like, when those things happen, it often is so intense that you can't, I would not say I did. Like, my experience was that it was not coincidence. It was absolutely intervention. So yeah. And yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was just gonna say, and that made me think that something is bigger than me out there, and that there's something that connects us in a way that I don't understand. And I don't have to understand it. I don't understand how electricity works, and I use it. So if I believe that something is out there and that we're all connected somehow, and that I would call it, there's a God. I would say that. I would say that there's a greater power, that I would say things are by design, not by default. There's way too many parallels in how things are. Like the way a neuron is, the way a leaf is, there's so many, the way the universe is designed, it looks like a neuron. Okay. Everything looks like a neuron. And it's just fascinating. I'm like, how could statistically, the possibilities that there's so many parallels, it's just wild. So that the thought that there might be a connected creativeness to life or to existence, it seems like a fit for me. I know it's not a fit for everyone, but it definitely has me operate the world in a better way. Also, I know who was at my door, and I'm really glad I didn't answer.
Oh,
we'll talk about that later.
Oh my goodness. So the reason I wanted to bring this topic up just quickly, the second reason was because when I first met you years ago, I had no idea that you like believed in something, right? Like a little bit religious or spiritual or whatever however you describe it. And then I actually didn't learn about you until like years later. Like you don't like post it on Instagram really, or like things like that, right? And I just learned about it through like conversations, and you would say something like, "Oh, my relationship with God," and I'd be like, "You're what?"
It's weird to some people out. Yeah, I don't know. What I would say is if you know that it's there, you can see it in how I write. You can see it in how I speak. You can see it in how I operate in my life. You can see how the decisions I make, the people I choose to be friends with. And I'm not saying I choose to be friends with people who share my spirituality, faith, religion, whatever. Yeah, I'm selective with the people that I let speak into my life based on what I believe. It's a great filtration for me. And it means I pick people who speak into it and people who speak against it that keep me thinking. Because I think critically thinking, asking questions, staying curious is the only way I'm going to continue to grow.
So it's like the perfect segue into you were trying to get out of me what my selection process is for a partner.
Oh my God, let's go back.
How did we circle through that whole path? That was great.
I had a terrifying experience.
Oh yeah.
I will say I feel like my adrenaline is settled. Like I want to know. I have so many questions. Okay. I want to know who does that. I want to know who does that, who shows up and uninvited, unannounced after you've set a boundary.
Not me.
I'm like, whoa. I don't think I could have been clearer. I really don't know. I guess when you decide you want something.
Jeez.
This does not apply to people because there is free will. You have a choice. And my choice was no. No, thank you, sir. Okay. Your criteria for picking people. How, like, okay, so maybe no. Better question. The person you want to be with, what is this person like? Because I think criteria selection, I truly believe that when you're with the person, you grow and you shift. Like every time I've dated someone, like if I've dated someone who's more, I don't know, way more of a weightlifter, I probably lift weights a little more because I'm around someone who does it more. I was like, okay, well, let's do that. And someone who really likes to go and do road trips, I did more road trips. And so it's just kind of that. But if you were to, with Magic Wand, your life is, and you're with the person of your dreams, what is this person like?
So I think I should start with maybe backstory or context about like how I approach dating now versus how I did before, right? So in my 20s, I guess you'd call it like kind of serial dating, especially with dating apps. Like, yeah, Friday date, Sunday coffee date, Wednesday date, like new people typically. And just like kind of figuring it out sort of thing, right? And then I went to therapy, and which is the best starter of any story. I was talking to my therapist and I was like, I'm like seeing all this success and getting exactly what I'm working for in business and in work and that sort of thing. And I'm like, why am I not seeing success in relationships? I don't feel like I'm good at it. Right. And then she just sat there and stared at me. And I was like, oh, I put like next to no hours into it compared to it's just like there's no reps. Right. So it's the amount of time I've invested into like something longer than 3 months is like next to zero over the last 6 years. Right. And so now that I turned 30 and it's like a light bulb went on. And so I'm way more selective, I guess, with who I would go on a date with. Just because I really just want to have it be a person where I'm like, I could see this being, 6 months or plus, right? It's not just like this little fun fling sort of thing, right? Because I want to have the opportunity to put the hours in and like be good at it, right? Because then I don't know, it's nice to be good at things, and also it could just be something wonderful between two people. But yeah, so the actual like, I guess I don't know. It feels like a research experiment if you say like selection criteria. But I guess it is a research experiment in some sense. But yeah, I don't. It's tough to define. I feel like it changes all the time, but I would definitely want someone who is as curious as I am. Like my curiosity kind of knows no bounds, I think. That I don't know if I could like list it all out, but I know the feeling that I'm searching for, right? Or like I will know I have found it when I feel this feeling. And that's just the feeling of like it's your best friend, right? It's it's the person you want to like wake up to and say good morning, all those like cute romantic things, but it's also the person you want to like come to with your problems and help them or have them help reflect, to make sure you're doing a good job and that sort of thing. So I mean there's always those kind of surface criteria, but at the end of the journey, it's that best friend feeling for me.
I want someone who brings out the magic and not the madness.
You don't want to get a little crazy sometimes?
No, well, it's like I'm talking like making you question your own reality, like madness. So one example was like this person who I've drawn this, what I believe is a clear boundary. And I've declined. I know it's not a fit. And he's like, but it is a fit. If I say it's not a fit and you think it's a fit, by virtue of that, it's not a fit.
It's like mutual agreement, right? Yeah.
So there has to be some level of consensus. I have a similar, I have like 5 things that I really want to see in this person that I'm with. And I agree with you that it's a feeling. Because I mean, you can have everything logical. And that one person I was telling you about that like blew my mind. One of my best connections of all time is that I felt like I was at home. I've grown up in homes that I haven't felt like I was at home at. And with this person, I'm like, oh my God, I feel at home.
Right.
It's such a different experience. And he actually emulated a lot of the traits that I would love. Like he's kind of a great avatar for what I look for in something. And it's kind of, I mean, people will grow, shift, and change. And it's not like you can have a necessary, maybe you can have a checklist and someone shows up and they're just like your checklist, or maybe someone's a work in progress. Cause I don't know about you, but I'm for sure a work in progress. And I maybe this is a great opportunity for you to give me feedback on the characters I'm looking for. And if the person who I'm describing would be attracted to who I am as a person right now. Okay. Ready? This is good stuff. I'm ready to reveal myself to the public. That's good. So one of the traits I really want is someone who's intelligent. By intelligence, I mean someone who's resourceful enough to figure out the answer. You don't necessarily need to be a physicist or a doctor or whatever, but you have to be willing to figure it out, which to me is the definition of intelligence. You don't necessarily have to know the answer, but you're going to do what it takes to figure it out. Didn't know how to change spark plugs. Turns out you can learn. Another characteristic that's deeply important to me is generosity. And people immediately jump to finances, but yes, absolutely be generous with your money. Like, what does someone need for help? How can you surprise and love on someone when they're sad? Like someone who's emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally generous. Like, I need to know that on a day that sometimes happens where you've had the worst boardroom battle of your life, that I can come home and you will be physically generous. And maybe you had a stressful day, but we can just hug for like a minute, just for a minute. And then that kind of generosity is really important to me. And generosity in conversation, a willingness to listen, as well as a willingness to engage and offer and participate. And so all of those things inside the world of generosity. So generosity, again, not meaning purely financial. There's just so much space for generosity. There's so much space for it. Ambitious, have some goal, any goal, pick a goal. You want to grow the largest corn you've ever grown, biggest pumpkin. Maybe you want to win a pumpkin growing up, but I don't care. Pick a goal, pick any goal. Some ambition. Someone who is my best friend, and someone who I'm attracted to. I used to have a rule that I didn't have to be physically attracted to the people I dated. Turns out, maybe not the best rule. Some level of attraction is probably very important. I'm like, because if you're what you have then is intimacy and commitment. And that gives you a friendship, not a romantic relationship. There's Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love. It's intimacy, commitment, and I don't know, some kind of like physical romance or something. And when you have all three, it's called consummate love. And when you just have intimacy and commitment, you have a friendship, which I'm excellent at. I love having friends, but I want you to be my best friend that I want to make out with. Doesn't sound crazy. Maybe not.
I mean, just saying it that way is absolutely hilarious, but I know exactly what you're saying.
I want him to throw in a baseball cap backwards and me be like, what?
Yeah. I'm definitely following what you're describing, but the thing that is just like popping into my head as you're describing is I don't think I know any. So the way you describe this and like go through kind of the list of things and like the deeper meaning behind these things reminds me of my aunt, actually. She like speaks in the same way, right? And so what I'm just the thought that popped up was I don't know if I've ever heard a man describe what he wants or his desire in like a partner, like in that way. I've literally only, maybe I just don't hang out with guys that talk this way, maybe, but I've literally only heard women go through like that description, like the breadth of it and the depth for each thing, right? Whenever I hear, my guy friends or other guys like talk about what they would like in a girlfriend, it's like it's pretty much just like I think they explain it in like a surface way, but there's meaning behind it. But it's mostly just like someone who's like fun, pretty, fit, what else, and lets me hang out with my guy friends whenever I want, right? And that doesn't really give me much information. I'm like, I cannot play matchmaker for you ever, because that's like literally everyone wants someone who's like smart, funny, and good looking. Like that's fucking what the general criteria of partnership is like. So it's like, give like think about it a little more maybe, and then get back to me. But in terms of what you're saying, I totally get what you're saying. And I think I've told you this many times before. My intuition is that you will not find that person here. You need to move, change your environment. Change your environment. Now, at least I have it on record, so you can't ignore it.
I can't ignore
because I have said that at least 3 times.
to the world. And it's not Antarctica either. It's somewhere in between. Yeah, I really don't know. It's it'll be interesting to see how or if it unfolds. Like I'm like, how it's got to, right? Like it's got to work out. Like again, and honestly, outside of this conversation, we can go into this more, but there's some things I've realized that I need to do first. That I'm like, oh, that's a moment of clarity. I was like, okay, I was listening to an interview today and I thought to myself, this man is speaking as if I was like, as we might as well be the same person. Not for how we're educated or whatever, but how he was explaining his experience was very, I was like, oh no, I have absolutely hardened my heart, which actually, I did want to bring this up. There's two quotes I wanted to bring up. One I couldn't find, but I know the general thing. It's by this mathematician. His name is, I believe, John Saxon. And he said, math isn't difficult. Math is different. And with time, what is different becomes easy and familiar, something along those lines. And so I'm like, okay, so I've spent all this time. I'm an excellent student. You want to figure out how to get a grade an A grade? I can do that. No problem. You want to know what an airtight presentation looks like? I got you. You want to know how to like do insane amounts of work in very limited amounts of time? I got it. But in the world of relationships, to your point, what I haven't invested a ton of time in is relationships. And there was probably a few defining moments where I was heartbroken. Like the worst of the worst happened. Like thinking about it now, I'm like, oh my God, like that version of me was so broken. I dated someone who led another life and his family didn't know and I didn't know. And when it came to, I mean, it always comes to the surface at some point, like you can't hide everything.
Yeah.
And it came to the surface and I was so upset with myself for not knowing. The person I blamed was me. And I felt so fooled that I now look for being fooled. So on dates, I'm like, where are you fooling me? Like what a ridiculous, like, I mean, people are bringing their A game the first few dates. And I'm like, how are you trying to lie to me? And that's not going to yield success.
I've been on dates where I felt as if the person sitting across from me is like very suspicious of me.
Right.
And then I'll call them out. I'll be like, you just the look on your face is like, you seem so suspicious of me. And
correct, I am.
yeah. And then obviously they're like, no, just it's fine, blah, blah. And I'm just like, okay, cool.
Yeah. One, I think it also happens to people who are big feelers. So like if you like, I mean, you've seen me when I'm joyful, it's not like this much joy. It's like I fully experience joy and I let every cell in my body feel it and totally celebrate it. Because what a great emotion, what a great experience, joy, appreciation, fulfillment, gratitude. I'm like I'm flying big. But you know what happens when I'm sad? Same deal. Like every cell of my body aches and I really work to not feel it. I will do anything to not feel it because it feels so awful and so intense that I try not to feel it. And so what happens when you do that is you harden and you ignore and you start to dissociate in some ways from your experience, which brings me to this quote from C.S. Lewis, which one of my exes showed me because he was oddly enough at the time, my age right now. And he had wandered and walked through life and also found himself in a space where his heart had been hardened. So listeners, this is by C.S. Lewis from The Four Loves. And every time I read it, my throat closes and I'm like, oh my God, I screwed it up. Okay. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully around hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love at all is to be vulnerable. And again, that's by C.S. Lewis. And what I have found, especially over the last 3 years, with the addition of a niece and a nephew into my world, is loving them hurts. It physically hurts me. And it's because what my nervous system learned as a child and through some heartache as a young adult, as well as a adult, is that the people who are closest to you can cause you the most pain. And rather than processing it and acknowledging how I felt and working through it, I threw my attention, love, efforts into everything else and kept relationships transactional, so that I couldn't get hurt. So the depth was never there. And then the second I found myself falling in love with my niece and nephew, I'm like, oh my God, what's this? This is awful. This reminds me of something. And the feeling itself isn't bad, but what I've connected that feeling of love to is so painful that my heart had hardened, and I won't even open up. So now that's my my current journey is softening my heart.
This is like a masterclass on the root of toxic masculinity.
Is it?
Yeah, because I imagine that's how it starts for men. Like, it's not like men are incapable of like love and feelings, right? But like almost exactly word for word what you described was like some sort of heartbreak, not dealing with the emotions. It's just like too painful to deal with. So we harden ourselves psychologically and emotionally, and then you use some sort of outlet for when the feelings come up, and then you have a transactional relationship, every relationship down the line. And that's just exactly what it sounds like to me.
Well, and my offer is that maybe it's not toxic masculinity. Maybe it's a lack of neuroregulation in humans.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
So it's like so if it's toxic masculinity and it's word for word and it's in me, I don't know if I'm toxically masculine. Maybe I am. I could be, for sure.
Yeah.
But you see, but you hear what I'm saying, right? Like it's
I was just using it as like a label to describe a process, right?
But it could very well be the same thing, because as a child, crying was bad. Don't be seen. Don't make a fuss. Don't like you must understand you're the oldest. You get it. So I had to ignore my needs or my wants. Like if I wanted to be hugged or held, like your little sister needs it more, which is probably true, but I also still needed that. And if I look at my love languages, do you know what your love languages are?
Oh, I've done like a little questionnaire before. I don't like, honestly.
Did I make you do that? I might have made you do that.
Well, you and probably 8 other girls I've been on dates with. They're like, oh, what are your love languages? I'm like, I don't know, we'll see. But I mean, a little bit of all of them, like, but they're skewed to whatever. But I think it was like quality time, physical touch, acts of service. I like gifts, but I don't thrive off gifts. I'm very much like if you make time for me, that means a lot. Because my understanding of life is like, it's really difficult to make time for other people other than like your immediate responsibilities, right? So that one has a lot of meaning for me when someone takes their Friday night and they want to spend it with me. That's really deep. I'll tell you though, one of the only places I cry is at weddings.
Me too.
just like I get so emotional when the bride walks in, and then I look at the groom and I'm like, oh my God, this is like, I don't even have words to describe it.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it is, but it's like, I don't know, something, I'm even like kind of tearing up right now. It just gets me.
Well, and I mean, there's a lot of people who don't like the institution of marriage, and I love it. And I love it because what it takes to, if you get what a vow means, like if you understand what vow means and you're doing a public declaration in front of people who usually in wedding ceremonies, you're asked as the witnesses, all of the humans sitting there, to be the space and the support for the success of this marriage, because this is where people forget that your relationship isn't just here. It isn't just me and you. It's people around you can speak into it. So how are the people around you creating the environment for your marriage to thrive? And also, who do you need to select out and select in to have that influence? But that there is nothing to me more sacred or powerful than doing a public declaration, commitment, and promise in front of the people you love who are holding space for you to grow something that is well new-ish.
Yeah, I imagine doing that public declaration or vow in front of like loved ones, so a little bit down the line, potentially internally, like just between you and your partner, it's not going well, it's starting to fail, and you're at the point where you might want to give up, but these external people who witness this could, potentially help keep you accountable to the promise you made, right? That's kind of the power of it, I imagine.
Well, and I mean, there's definitely times where you need to leave for sure. And there are so many times you don't.
Right.
Like I like that grit you were talking about. Human interaction is not easy.
Yeah.
It can be, but there's room for misinterpretation. It's just the same way we swipe left and right and make up the nonsense we make about people when we just see what's on the surface. Of course, it's going to happen in a conversation. Someone shuts a door too quickly or too loud, and all they're doing is they're rushing because they're out of the house, but you think they're mad. And I mean, I look at my sister and her husband, and they actively work on their marriage all the time. And I have seen that marriage grow. And nice. when they, I mean, obviously relationships change and what have you, but when my sister was first in that relationship and that marriage was first starting, the intention was, if you share it, it wasn't to tear down the marriage. It was to listen and hold space. And to give space for the marriage to resolve whatever the conflict was. And I mean, like, this is like, she left the laundry out, or like things that people that are just minor wounds, but death by 1,000 cuts over time. And the growth and resolve, like their marriage is beautiful. It's beautiful. Like watching it grow is just the coolest thing. And I realized their anniversary is actually next week, and they've been married for 5 years, and it feels like a blink of an eye. They've been together for 7. And I don't recognize the couple they are today. So giving yourself room to be married to someone and willingness to grow, even without someone, you yourself being willing to change your own opinions, willing to see things differently, willing to say, am I doing this in the best possible way? Is there a healthier, more loving, more kind way to do life? Wow. And so Jesse and Amber, huge shout out to you guys. You guys are an absolute inspiration, and I think you're doing a great job. Yeah.
Really cute. Marriage is, I am not scared of being committed to someone with them for the rest of my life, right? Because, as we discussed before, you grow together, that sort of thing. But if you're sure that it's your best friend, like, what are you scared of? And the interesting thing is, I am so terrified, and I have been since I was like 15 years old, of the actual wedding.
Oh.
And the reason is because of like growing up, I guess we didn't mention this, but like divorced parents, and kind of, when I was 2, they divorced, and like about a year or 2 later, they each remarried other people, and then those marriages have lasted 25 years now. Congrats, shout out to my parents. So in real time, growing up, I've had it's actually a gift, I would say, the fortune of seeing 2 separate marriages, 2 separate households that I'm like equally a part of, go 25 years, and you get to see and experience a lot of things. It's super interesting to reflect on. But my actual wedding, if and when it happens, the actual day is terrifying, just because it's a lot of people, a lot of different personalities. Some may or may not get along. There's a lot of like history growing up, and it's something I've been worrying about since I was younger. So I think I'm kind of relying on the fact that the person that I would marry, they would make me feel calm in that moment, and it really helped me get through it. I think that's how I would know that it was the one, right? If I get to that day that I've been dreading for 20 years, and
maybe dread it less. Maybe practice dreading it less. Like, I don't want to, because you're creating neural pathways, man. I will say, if this offers you any comfort. Okay, two things actually. That butterfly feeling that you get with someone new sometimes. I've heard once that trust that it's more your person, more the one when you're calm, where it's not anxious.
I'm glad you brought this up because I don't remember if I told you this the other day, but so one of my friends, Jeremy, he knows this.
I've met Jeremy.
You met Jeremy. Okay.
I met Jeremy.
Jeremy's the best. He really gets me on a different level. And he knows that, like, if I go on dates or I do certain things, I get nervous, right? So sometimes, but I might not externalize the anxiety. It's just like internal, and I'll kind of seem like I'm normal and doing fine. But I went on like, this wasn't a date, but it was like, I have a crush on this girl, right? And just an impromptu sort of outing. And I was like nervous and anxious up to the point I was, God, what if I like say something stupid, or just a typical thing that every human does, right? As soon as I was around her, it's just like Zen. I was like, what is this feeling? It's crazy.
It's super cool.
I like wasn't worried about like impressing her, or like saying something like super smart, or not saying something dumb. I was just like, no, it's just flowing kind of thing. And yeah, so that was a cool experience I had recently.
That is cool. And I mean, it like doesn't mean she's the one. I don't know, but it means it's a better choice.
Right. Exactly.
Then, it's like, okay, well, it was a really good litmus test. And the other thing to comfort you is my parents had a very dramatic divorce. And we didn't really sort out how my sister's wedding would go. And it was a destination wedding. And we book out this entire boutique hotel. All of it is us. It's us. And I'm like, oh my God, let's make sure, like, I'm freaking out because I'm like, I don't know how this is going to go. Because all that comes up is your childhood memories, being like, oh, things didn't go great back then. They're probably not going to go great right now. And they're grown-ups. They can handle themselves. It went smooth. Like, so smoothly. I was surprised. And pleasantly surprised. And was it, like, I'm sure uncomfortable for them? Yeah. But I think what my parents did a really great job of is that the day wasn't about them or their
That's
whatever.
key.
Yeah. They like really has to be about your child. And what an incredible moment to, like, it could have been real dramatic and it somehow didn't get there. And amen. Wow. So yeah, I mean, there's hope. Absolutely, there's hope.
So my mom is admittedly one of my best friends, and she never like really pressures me into like the dating stuff or marriage or kids or anything like that. But if we're like just sitting at the counter and having a couple of drinks and just chatting or whatever, the one thing she has said multiple times is she is adamant that I do not fly away and get married on a beach in Mexico. She's like so against that, just her opinion of like destination weddings. And so it's really funny. I think I don't know if I ever get to that point. Hopefully it's not tough convincing my partner not to go get married on a beach.
Honestly, I think it just like I wish we said she got married on a beach. We all went to Victoria. It was so quaint and beautiful. It was this place called, I don't actually remember.
Yeah.
Brentwood Bay. It was great. But like everyone for a week, if you don't like everyone, that's a long time.
Yeah. For a week, right? And you need to justify, the money and the 5-hour flight somehow. So you got to spend a week, but in country within like going to Victoria, and it's 4 days, 3 days, whatever. So. It's
crazy. Yeah, it's not too bad. It was great. Yeah. Well, this was a very fun conversation. It was exactly what I had hoped for. And okay. I'm so grateful.
Good. I'm glad you're happy with how it went. I'm surprised we went for so long.
I looked at the clock and I was like, no way.
Yeah.
No way. But that was amazing. Before I close it off, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I do have one thing that I don't think I touched on. So one of my favorite quotes was made famous by Isaac Newton. It's standing on the shoulders of giants. It's kind of like it's just saying like, so essentially what you can extract from that is nobody does or creates anything of value on their own. There's always, people behind them where the building blocks were set in place for them. And I just think if you subscribe to that as a truth, which I do, gratitude is implicit in everything you do. And so I think I'm like thinking about that a lot lately, and making sure I express gratitude to people.
I'm so glad. I will, and to add to that, standing on the shoulders of giants, sometimes you don't know there's giants underneath you. And sometimes it feels like you're really alone. And sometimes when you're on the shoulders of giants, you see no one else. And it can feel very lonely. But that doesn't mean that you weren't supported in your journey getting there. Sometimes it's just hard to see.
Wow, that's such a nice way to end the. It's so uplifting.
Yeah, thank you. It came through me. Amazing. Well, Lee, I know you have some things that you're up and doing. So for those of you who didn't catch, Lee's amazing in general. He does software development. He also teaches people about getting it from end to end. And I don't really fully understand it, but you do have a company that you have launched some courses on. Do you want to share a little bit about that before?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have like a company, or just like a corporation that I use for like providing educational services or any kind of like short-term consulting. The company is called Q1.
Spell that.
And spell that if I can. That's a tough word. Queuue space one, word one. And yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, my email is lee@q1.io. And basically just what we're trying to do there is anyone who wants to learn about technology, is doing like a career change, or is a student, something like that, and wants to learn more about software development, we can provide like a stepping stone, or we can kind of point you in the right direction, or even come up with like a short-term lesson plan on things to teach yourself, as well as like live coding sessions if you're kind of already into it and just struggling. And then more on the B2B side of things, I can do if you have like an idea for an app or something like that takes a little bit more custom development. We can do just kind of like quick prototype across the weekend, just to provide something that is, clickable and might do something kind of fancy. And yeah, just to get you started, sort of thing.
And remember, he's good. He did ego checks, but he's actually very good at what he does. Well, Lee, what a treat and a treasure.
Okay, thank you so much.
I don't think this will be the last time you're on, because my God, I think I'm going to have a series about conversations with people that I just love having conversations with, because I really feel like I got a lot out of this conversation.
Well, amazing.
So
did I.
you.
I mean, that was I was kind of thinking halfway through, and I'm like, how do I still have stamina for this? Like,
I don't even feel tired, which is crazy. Yeah. So that again, that's a sign of like there's one thing with being like exhausted and having no steam left. And there's another thing of being like having a long day, but feeling full. And that fulfillment shaped hole, when it isn't a hole and it has something in it, your endurance is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. So find the thing that fills that fulfillment shaped hole and do it.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much again. This is great.
Wonderful. Have an amazing night. If this podcast has landed with you, served you, provided value, please let us know. Give us a like, subscribe, share it with a friend that you know it will make a difference for. We are here to be a contribution and a service to others. We cannot wait to see you next time. Thanks again for tuning in. Take care.